Good evening, everybody. At 5:03 p.m. on Monday, July 7th, I will call this meeting of the City of Evanston's Rules Committee to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Isles?
Here.
Mayor Biss?
Here.
Councilmember Nusma?
Here.
Councilmember Burns? Councilmember Sufferton?
Here.
Councilmember Davis?
Here.
Councilmember Rogers?
Here.
Councilmember Harakaris?
Here.
Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Harris?
Present.
Councilmember Burns is online, and it's my understanding that he wishes to participate remotely for a reason which is allowable, and with a motion and second, we can approve that. It's been moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Mayor Biss. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Remote participation of Councilmember Burns is approved. That brings us to public comment. We have two people signed up for public comment. Is anybody here?
Let's see. Did you sign
Let's
up?
go to
Toby.
Mary Rosinski first and then Toby. Go ahead, Mary, you have the floor. You are muted, however.
Sorry, I just was able to stay in this meeting. So I just had three questions, and I know you want to encourage community engagement. And on the Rules Committee, I was hoping one is, A, can you consider starting all the city council meetings at the same time? And I think that would make it easier for people to know when to follow you guys. Two, I'm just unclear as to, are we still talking about the possibility of the mayor voting when there's a 4-vote affirmative and less than 4 negative? And I wanted to understand the logic of that. And the third question was regarding the consent agenda. I would hope that any council member would be able to remove an item from consent agenda as they do now without a second and without any 24-hour notice. So those were the three things that kind of stuck out for me today. So I appreciate your time and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Toby Sachs, 7th Ward resident and Vice Chair of the Board of Ethics. I'm grateful for Councilmember Davis's referral recommending 2 changes to restore transparency and timeliness to the ethics complaint process, and I ask the Rules Committee to adopt both proposals. The current process for consideration of ethics complaints was put in place 4 years ago to avoid grandstanding and weaponisation of the complaint process, but it has had some unintended and unfortunate consequences with regard to transparency and timeliness. The current process has a special counsel working in private with sole jurisdiction over whether a complaint merits an administrative hearing. Complaints and determinations that do not proceed to an administrative hearing, and then the Board of Ethics, can only be discovered by the public through the Freedom of Information Act. The proposed revision requires that all complaints and jurisdictional findings shall be publicly released on the city's website after a jurisdictional determination is made by the Special Ethics Council. This follows the best practice recommended in the Illinois Attorney General's Model Ethics Ordinance 20-4, Section 5, paragraphs C and E. It will restore appropriate transparency while avoiding weaponisation and ensure that, once again, ethics complaints and the subsequent rulings are open to public scrutiny and aired in the light of day. Staff's alternative suggestion would fail to meet that standard, would not have resulted in any of the 20-plus complaints brought in the last 4 years being made public, which I find unacceptable. Councilmember Davis's second point in a referral does not seem to be addressed in staff's memo, and I believe it's also important. The Illinois Attorney General's Model Ethics Ordinance 20-4, Section 5, paragraph G, recommends that, I quote, if a complaint is filed during the 60 days preceding the date of any election at which the respondent is a candidate, the Commission shall render its decision within 7 days after the complaint is filed. I agree with Councilmember Davis that the provision should be added to our Code of Ethics to restore transparency to our elections. With no such clause currently in place, there were 2 ethics complaints submitted 4 and 5 weeks prior to this year's elections, which were not adjudicated by special counsel until 10 days after Election Day. The complaints were technically insufficient, so it's not important this time. But had they had merit, the timing would be unacceptable. I respectfully ask Rules Commission to pass both amendments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. That does it for public comment, unless we have anybody else. All right. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from last time. There was one correction to the minutes with regards to the attendance. Has that been fixed? Yes. And so Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hadakatis, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Let's do a roll call vote since Councilmember Burns is remote.
Councilmember Isles?
I have to abstain. I wasn't here.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
By a vote of 9-0, with one abstention, the minutes from June 2nd are approved. Which brings us to items for consideration. The next item is item R1, committee member assignments. Staff is recommending that we fill a vacancy on the Social Services Committee. Councilmember Isles.
So I had to leave social services because of my job at Interfaith Action. And so that leaves me with just 2 committees. And so the ones that I'm particularly interested in joining are Economic Development, AP&W, and Planning and Development. And so I'm just going to start by checking to see if anybody who's on those committees is willing to swap out for social services or make space for me on those committees.
The 3 committees you mentioned were AP&W, P&D, and Economic Development. And just to read through the council members who are on AP&W, Councilmember Kelly, Harris, myself, Suffredin, and Davis, that's AP&W. P&D, we have Kelly, Burns, Davis, Rogers, and Hadakatis. And Economic Development is Kelly, Nusma, Burns, Suffredin, Davis, and Rogers. So are there any takers from those committees who are willing to resign their seat and let Councilmember Isles fill that vacancy? Councilmember Harris.
So I'm not willing to give up my seat on AP&W, but if I remember correctly, when we first started picking, we looked at numbers, who were on so many committees. So can you go through each council member and see how many each person is on? Is that hard to do?
I'm going to ask staff to address that.
No problem. Councilmember Kelly is on 4. Councilmember Harris is on 4. Councilmember Isles is on 2. Councilmember Nusma is on 4. Councilmember Burns is on 5. Councilmember Suffredin is on 4. Councilmember Davis is on 5. Councilmember Rogers is on 5. And Councilmember Harris is on 4.
Okay, so thank you for the information. So I think of those 5s on APW, is there someone who APW needs to step down? Somebody from APW.
Councilmember Harris. Davis.
I just wanted to mention that I actually stepped down from NU City Committee. I sent an email to all the, City School. So mine is actually 4 now.
Okay. Councilmember Kelly.
So I think there were a good number of folks who have 5 or on 5 committees, so it was 3, right? You want either AP&W, P&D?
Yeah.
And the third one was?
Economic Development.
So on Economic Development, I know there's at least 2 people on there who are on 5 committees. So maybe one of the people on 5 committees who serve on Economic Development would be willing to step down, to switch out. Who would those be? That would be
And the five
Burns or
committees are-
News? Who are the,
So that would be Councilmember Burns and Councilmember Rogers. It was Councilmember Davis, but she is now off of City School Liaison Committee, which gives her 4 committees instead of 5.
As chair of
My
this meeting,
virtual hand just up.
sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
And I'm the chair of Economic Development Committee for the next 6 months, so this would not be a time where I'm willing to step down, honestly, from any committee, but definitely not economic development. I will say that last term, we expanded the amount of seats in, I think, in several committees, and so that is an option.
Councilmember Isles.
That was my next solution. I don't think we can expand economic development because it has a lot of community members on it, and that would make it unwieldy. But because AP and W and Planning and Development are standing committees that have just council members on them, I would make a motion to expand both of them by 1 to give me an opportunity to get to 4.
All right, there is a motion on the table. Is there a second for the motion at this time?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Harris. It's moved by Councilmember Isles. So we'll continue discussion with Councilmember Kelly.
so it's the same situation on P&D, which was also one of the options. We also have members serving on P&D who are on 5. Right, and who would that be?
That is Councilmember Burns and Councilmember Rogers.
Yeah. Councilmember Davis.
I know we're going to take a vote, but I don't understand why we ranked committees if we were just going to expand them later to get people, so people can kind of do whatever they want. And I also don't think that it's good practice for us to have a committee with 6 members, which could necessarily, where if everyone is there, we could end up in a tie quite frequently. I would say that I'm actually more in favor of us opening up Economic and Development Committee for that reason, because I can't recall, but I believe that it just seems like it'd be less of an issue in that situation.
There are 6 council members on the Economic Development Committee right now.
Economic Development only has, I thought, 3 or 4 city council members. Okay.
Economic Development has a lot, 6 council members. Correct. Plus community members. Yes. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I just would say in that scenario, it would just move forward to council with a neutral vote, which is not a terrible thing. I'm open to either one, but I think the reason why we expanded it last time is because if there are people that want to serve and contribute to additional committees, then what really is the issue that we're trying to solve if we allow that? Especially now that we've already reduced the amount of committees that one council member is on. Everybody is at 4, kind of hovering around 4 or 5. And so I think we've achieved what what any issue was last time, was maybe there were council members, including myself, serving on too many committees. We've addressed that. Now we just want to make sure that people can contribute as much as they would like. And I see that as a good thing. And so, I don't have any personal issue with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Isles and Councilmember Kelly. I'm not sure who was first.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
So I was going to say the same thing as Councilmember Burns, that a neutral designation is not a negative thing. It just goes to full council, which is fine with me. There's also, by my understanding, historic precedents for this. You've expanded this committee multiple times in the past, and so I don't think it's an unreasonable request.
Councilmember Rogers.
A quick question. Are we talking about one specific committee or both committees?
I'm talking about both.
Okay. So the request is to expand both P&D and APW.
Yes, because they're both standing committees that just have council members on them.
All right. Oops.
Councilmember Kelly.
So I guess I would ask if either Burns or Rogers, maybe not, but since Councilmember Burns, if you'd be interested in stepping down from, or swapping, or rather stepping down from P&D. And then we wouldn't have this.
And I think I responded. I am not interested in that. I have a lot of development in the ward, and I've already stepped down from several committees. I want to make sure I'm representing my ward on this committee.
All right. There being no further discussion, I will call the vote on the motion to expand ANPW and P&D by 1 seat each. Can we do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Isles,
Yes.
Mayor Biss,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin. No. Councilmember Davis.
No.
Councilmember Rogers.
No.
Councilmember Harakaris.
Aye.
Sorry. And Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
By a vote of 6-4, the motion passes, and ANPW and P&D are both expanded by 1 seat. Mayor Biss.
I move that we appoint Councilmember Isles to the 2 new vacancies created on ANPW and P&D.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Biss, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion on appointing Councilmember Isles to ANPW and P&D? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Isles.
Yes.
Mayor Biss.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
I think that was an aye.
That was an aye.
Okay. Councilmember.
Yeah, aye.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Councilmember Suffredin. Aye. Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, that motion passes. Councilmember Isles is appointed to ANPW and P&D. That still leaves a vacancy in the Social Services Committee and the City School Liaison Committee since Councilmember Davis has resigned. So do you want to take care of that right now if anyone is willing to step up to either of those? Anyone? Going once. Councilmember Harris is on both. I can step up to the School Liaison Committee. That's a fairly light lift. So I will move myself into that position if somebody wants a second.
Second.
It's been moved by myself, seconded by Councilmember Harakaris. Any discussion on appointing me? Does the mayor need to do that? Okay, we're
think
cool
rules-
as a
rules-
rules committee?
I think
All
so,
right, just want to make sure we're in order. I'm not looking for glory on the city school committee here.
And yet you found it.
I will ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Isles.
Yes.
Mayor Biss.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin. Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
By a vote of 10-0, and with apologies from my family, I will be attending 3 city school committees each year. Yeah. No, just 3. Yeah. 3 total. Yeah. So that still leaves social services. Anybody? It's not in the power of the chair of this committee to twist any arms. So if nobody's willing to step up, I think we'll have to leave it there for right now. Okay. Let's move on to item number 2, which is Ordinance 46025, amending the Code of Ethics. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I move introduction of, I move passage of Ordinance 46-0-25.
I second.
It's been moved by Mayor Biss, seconded by Councilmember Rogers, that we approve Ordinance 46025 as drafted in the packet. Now, staff has made an additional recommendation, which is not included in the language as drafted. I want to make sure we're aware of that and comfortable with that. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Councilmember Kelly.
So I support this. I think it's a good idea. I just wonder if we are going to also publish any anonymous complaint. I mean, I think that could open the door to just, so, I don't know if our chair of the Board of Ethics has any thoughts on that. I mean, I feel like, in my opinion, those probably just shouldn't be accepted. I think you should have to.
Defer obviously to.
Mr. Chair, if you could approach the podium,
I'm
please.
only vice chair, just to be clear. My understanding is that they would be technically inadmissible. They would, though, be referred to special counsel. Special counsel would rule that jurisdiction. So, as drafted, I believe that they would be published. So, if you wanted to make an exception to it, that would need to be added to the language.
Yes. Good evening, Alex Ruggie, Corporation Counsel. That's correct. As drafted, even if a complaint is submitted anonymously, under the ordinances drafted here in the packet, it would still be published on the city's website.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item?
I don't think so, but I think we should give pause for a moment and think about that, what that could mean if anybody can submit anything without their name and know it's going to be published. I would recommend that we don't publish anonymous, just because I think it could open up something that we're not anticipating
Are you,
publishing. You would agree, Vice Chair? Yeah.
are you prepared
Okay,
to
so I will make
a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to exclude anonymous complaints.
So this is coming to Rules Committee, but would, as an ordinance, would have to be passed by council. So if everyone's comfortable, and I'm looking to Mayor Biss as enforcer of the rules at City Council, do we need to render this in writing, or can we accomplish that between now and then?
I mean, if you, after the audacious power grab that you just effectuated as a new member of the city school committee, are then relinquishing your chair authority and asking me to make a value judgment here, I would say if this were a city council meeting and I were in your shoes, I would demand that it be reduced to writing. That said, it's an ordinance, so it's going to come to council not once but twice, and you do what you want to do. And I do think that Councilmember Kelly's amendment was pretty darn clear. But just for transparency's sake, if this were council, I would say we're going to pause and ask for it in writing.
Councilmember Kelly, do you want to do that right now, or do you want to wait until this comes to council?
I think it's one quick sentence.
Okay?
Okay, I'll send that right now.
All right, we are standing by for a minute or two.
And just for my own edification while she's drafting, do you mind if I ask a question?
I'm going to ask a question first,
Oh, sorry.
which is, was there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Harris. The motion is coming to us in writing in just a minute. Mayor Pitts.
And this is not criticism. I get what you're trying to do, and I support it. But just to be clear, these anonymous complaints, which anybody could then post on the internet, not as an ethics complaint, also would still be subject to FOIA, correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Looks like Councilmember Kelly is still typing.
Mr. Mayor, can we get the Jeopardy music to play during these times when we are busily scribing out amendments?
There are copyright issues with playing music that does not belong to us.
Sing something that's similar, but not quite.
But Mr. Sachs, in addition to being vice chair of the Ethics Committee, was formerly chair of the Arts Commission. So perhaps you could commission a hold tune for the city council.
He's also married to the principal violist of the Evanston Symphony.
Should make it easy.
I like that now when we're at ease, it's just trivia.
Yeah.
Just Evanston trivia.
It is interesting being the vice chair of a three-person committee.
The important thing is to avoid being secretary.
Okay, is it in? It's not in my inbox yet, but I will. Is everyone seeing it?
Yep.
I'm not seeing it yet, but does it look good to everybody? Okay. There, it says amend ordinance 46025 to exclude anonymous ethics complaints from being published. So it's been moved by Councilmember Kelly, seconded, I believe, by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call on.
My hand is up. Sorry, Councilman.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to understand is would under the new rules or changes or whatever, would the anonymous complaints would they be investigated? Because my understanding now is those complaints don't move forward with an actual investigation.
So Councilmember Burns, they would still move to special counsel, and then special counsel would issue a jurisdictional ruling. My understanding is that because they're anonymous, they lack jurisdiction under the ordinance, but they would still have that formal review from special counsel.
But if the review, but I guess what I'm saying is because this came up recently and it was determined that, you know, I don't think they actually looked into it because of that. So I don't know if people know that if it's anonymous, at least in the way it's handled now, I don't know what the proper language is, but what Council Ruckey just described, they don't really look into it. So I just want folks to know that.
Yeah, so the ordinance requires that the complainant submit their name and the complaint and then any factual basis for it. So that's under the ordinance.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with this. I just wanted everybody to know that. All right, thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
All right.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, the motion passes. The ordinance is amended. And I will now call a roll on the underlying ordinance. This is to proceed to City Council, where it will then be introduced.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
By a unanimous vote of 10-0, ordinance 46025 as amended is approved by Rules Committee and will proceed to City Council for introduction. That brings us to item R3, which is a continuation of our discussion of City Council rules. What I would like to do is pick up from where we left off last time. It is not my desire or intent to review the work we did last meeting at this meeting. Hopefully we can get through the rest of the rules tonight, and then they will come back to us for consideration and hopefully a final vote at a future meeting of the Rules Committee. So tonight we're going to pick up from where we left off. We should have in front of us a copy of the draft rules, as well as a copy of the feedback that staff has accumulated, has compiled from what City Council told Liza earlier. There are copies right here if anybody needs some. For those following in the packet, the rules, the draft rules are starting on page 27, and the feedback from council, the compiled feedback is on, starting on page 57 of the packet. Or page 7 of just this packet, if all those numbers haven't confused you. So we're going to do as we did last time and go through the draft rules kind of step by step, focusing only on rules where there is existing feedback. And I'll initiate the discussion by asking staff to provide any context or explanation that they feel is necessary. And then I, as chair, will entertain specific motions on that section and on that section only. Same as last time, shouldn't be any surprises here. So let's continue, and we are going to pick up with section Roman numeral 4, which is the agenda section of the draft rules. And the first item in that section on which there was feedback is section B, procedures for bringing matters before City Council, and then item 1, placing items on the agenda. So is there any commentary from staff before we get into discussion of Roman numeral 4B1?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Newsma, City Manager Stowe, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Liza Robertson-Young, Chief Legislative Policy Advisor. In the section placing items on the agenda, there are a variety of proposals here around how council members can put items on the agenda, how the mayor places items on the agenda. One suggestion was that staff should be able to submit legislative items through the referrals process, which, while we appreciate it, I do want to be clear there are 2 mechanisms existing already for staff to put staff initiatives on the agenda. One is for the city manager to put administrative items like contracts directly on the agenda, and then the city manager is also empowered to submit a referral with 2 co-referrers through the referrals process, just like anyone else. So there are 2 existing mechanisms already for staff initiatives to get on the agenda, and I think our perspective is that adequately addresses the issue.
Thank you. So we will now entertain discussion and motions on 4B1, starting with Councilmember Kelly.
I'm sorry, I just forgot to turn off my light.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to weigh in on 4B1? Councilmember Rogers and then Councilmember Kelly.
I just have a quick question. There was a point of clarification that was being made to have the mayor follow the same process of going through the referrals committee, and there seemed to be some confusion over this last time because the rules were not consistent from one to the other. So I had put in here for in B1A to include the mayor in that as well, if that's the process that we want to move forward through with everyone going through referrals committee. So that's, I guess it's kind of a question as well as a clarification, because this kind of permeates throughout the document, where sometimes it includes the mayor going through referrals process and sometimes it doesn't, and I think it just needs to be cleared up one way or the other.
Mayor Bess.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with that. I think there's sort of I think here's the issue. I would argue, and I would guess a lot of people agree, it's untenable for the mayor not to be able to put things on the agenda somehow, because things come up. What our current, the current rules are incomprehensible and could be interpreted any number of ways by reasonable people. The way we've been sort of interpreting their silence is that the way I can put something on the agenda as the mayor is by creating a special order of business. And then sometimes that poses the question of, well, wait, aren't special orders of business things that are particularly emergent because there's the difficulty in holding them. So like, are you putting these on the agenda because you're putting them on the agenda, or are you putting them on the agenda in this way because you're trying to somehow make it harder for them to be slowed down? And so as I'm understanding this draft, it creates a different mechanism for the mayor to put stuff on the agenda so that not every mayoral initiative on the agenda winds up being a special order of business. I'm happy going either way, but I guess I would love direction from the council. Either we create an alternate way for the mayor to put stuff on the agenda, or else we stop complaining about special orders of business.
So if I can respond to that, I would prefer us to have the mayor follow the same process as every other city council member. So in keeping with the chair's request, I would move that B1A be amended to say a council member or the mayor who wishes to place a legislative item on it must first submit the item to the referrals committee. A majority of council, we'll get to that, I have the feeling, in a minute, but at least that first sentence be amended to include the mayor as well. But then I would also add the mayor may place any administrative or non-legislative item on the agenda at his purview.
Or her.
So that, I mean, if there's something that the mayor wants to add that is, I mean, a non-legislative issue or an administrative issue that you feel needs to be addressed, I think that should be a privilege granted to the mayor.
All right, so this, I heard you say motion,
Yes.
which is in fact a magic word. Can you restate that motion? And just to be clear, since we have, for the most part, text in front of us, we are not going to be rendering all these motions in writing,
Right.
Just so we can get through this meeting in a timely manner.
In section 4, agenda B, procedures for bringing matters, 1, placing matters on the agenda, the third bullet point, which says revive provision allowing the mayor to place items on the agenda as follows, which this would probably be in actually B, where it talks about the mayor placing items on the agenda, replacing that instead with the mayor may place a legislative item on the agenda provided it has been submitted through the referrals committee. The mayor may place any administrative or non-legislative item on the agenda, although I saw the mayor reach for his microphone when I said that, so I don't know if he has something he'd like to respond to on that.
Mayor Biss, and then Councilmember Heracadis, and then Councilmember Kelly.
I mean, I guess the thing that I'm totally uncomfortable with is the idea that there's just not a possibility of the mayor placing something on the agenda because it needs to get put on the agenda. The example I would give is the meeting that we had a week before the inauguration of the current president, where I created a special order of business to pass an update of our welcoming ordinance. There was not time to send that through the referrals process, and so it was important to do that quickly. So if you're saying that the mayor would retain the ability to create special orders of business unilaterally, and then for other items there's this other way around it, that I'm comfortable with.
I think that there's going to probably be a big discussion about special orders of business later, if I'm reading what I've had conversations with people on the side about. So I guess that if we're going to talk about a majority of the council may also place a special order of business on the agenda as one of the items, then I'm fine also extending that same privilege to the mayor as long as we have an understanding of what a special order of business is, because I think there's some confusion on that.
So Councilmember Rogers has made a motion. I haven't heard a second yet.
I'll second it.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Kelly, so thank you for doing that. Councilmember Heracadis, and then Councilmember Kelly.
I think what I was going to mention is I think we need a mechanism to be able to move quickly, and I think the Welcoming City Ordinance is a really good example of that. I guess this is something we'll discuss when we get back around to it, but I think I'm fine if the mayor has the power to do that. I also think it's totally fair if, like, the majority of us have an item we think we need to move quickly on, that we just put it on the agenda as a special order of business. I guess since I've never been on referrals committee, it's not every 2 weeks, right? It's once a month? It's every 2 weeks, okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Kelly?
I would just say this is a separate item and that we're going to discuss special orders of business and that this shouldn't be contingent and that we'll discuss that, separately. And I understand your point that, or maybe it's, more Mayor Biss's point that as long as there's a mechanism for an emergency or something urgent or that you would be amenable to this. So I do think that this can move and then we can have the discussion about how the mayor or anybody else can put something on the agenda that's urgent, separate from this.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to amend Roman numeral 4B1, lowercase b, with the text appearing in our packet. That's the motion that Councilmember Rogers has made. Is there any additional discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Isles?
No.
Mayor Biss?
No.
Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Councilmember Suffredin? No. Councilmember Davis?
No.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
And Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a vote of 8-2, that motion fails to pass. Is there any additional discussion on this particular item? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the...
There's another point here. Since we're talking about special orders of business, and we say a majority of council may place a special order of business, there was a bullet point here. I don't know who placed it on, allowing 3 members rather than a majority to place a special item of business, or special order of business, it should say, on the agenda.
Special orders of business are later on in the rules, and so we're going to get to that.
Okay, but that's where this point is, and
Yeah.
that's why my last thing, we discussed special orders as being the reason that that people were opposed to that, was so that the mayor could have an expedient process of doing it. So I just would like to know when we're going to address special orders of
Yeah.
business.
When we get to Roman numeral 5F.
So I would request then that we put a pin that also is referenced in B1A.
Okay, so noted. All right, so let's move on to 4B3, which is the approval of the agenda.
Real quick, Chair, can I say something briefly?
Go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
I just wanted to say to Councilman Rogers' part, that's the point. That's the reason why I voted no on that. Is I should have spoke up, but I felt like those two things should move. We should have that discussion at the same time. Let's talk about special orders and B1A or whatever it is, or B1 all together. So I look forward to having that discussion later. Thank you.
Okay, so now we are on B3, approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to say on that? Councilmember Kelly, is that your light for this item?
I'm sorry, I just think, and I don't think it's clearly defined in here, non-legislative, legislative. It used to be that referrals were for policy items only, and those really do require clear, tight definitions. So.
I'll address this question to staff. We do have a definitions section. Have those definitions been made clear in that section?
Yes, I believe when we met last time, one of the items that passed on the consent agenda was clarifying those definitions and tightening them up. So the draft that returns to you the next time you see this document will include those definitions.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see anybody raising their hand for section 4B3, approval of the agenda. So we are going to move on to section 4C, which is packet preparation and posting. There's C1, which is preparation of the packet. Does anybody want to weigh in on that particular item? I'll turn to staff first, like I said I would, offering you guys the first shot at giving us some context and explanation.
Yes, quickly just to do a little bit of level setting, there was a lot of interest in what time frame we're posting the packet in. The recommendation in the current draft is to keep the deadline at 48 hours, since that's consistent with state law, and it allows some additional flexibility in case of an emergency. I want to be clear that our current practice is to post the packet on Thursday evenings. That usually allows more than 90 hours advance notice, which is more than the 72 or 80 hours requested. The 48 hours proposal in this draft is not a proposal that we abandon our current practice. We would still post the packet on Thursday evenings. We would still give more than 90 hours notice. Customarily, the 48 hours is just to conform with state law and ensure that if there's an emergency, we have a little bit of added flexibility.
So, Councilmember Kelly.
So just a question regarding the 48 hours in the state law, and I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this, but is that any day, whether it's weekend or a holiday, or, I mean, just 48 hours?
Yes, my understanding is that under the Open Meetings Act, it's 48 hours regardless of when the meeting is.
Regardless if there's a holiday? Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no discussion on that item, let's move forward to 4C3, revision of the packet. Do we need any context on that one? Does anybody want to weigh in on 4C3, revision of the packet? Councilmember Rogers.
I don't have a motion, I just have more of a request that when revisions happen, I don't know how it works on council, but at land use, often I would be driving in and I would get 80 pages of citizen comment, which really was in an ineffective way of me getting citizen comment and being able to respond to it at a meeting. So I guess the request would be if there's some way we can do it to a certain hour maybe, and this is not a rule, it's a policy request. And then anything beyond that be presented to us that evening here, so that we honestly can say it literally hit the desk when we sat down. So we have not had a chance to review everything.
Mayor Biss.
Yeah, I have sort of the opposite question, though I agree with Councilmember Rogers' point. I mean, I love what this is trying to do, and, shall not make substantive alterations after that 48-hour window. I mean, it seems to me that in practice, sometimes things sort of get fleshed out during the course of that time, and maybe there's an update to the packet that in practice is adding transparency, because it's like a thing it's an amendment that's gonna be introduced in the meeting anyways, and so by publishing it, 36 hours before the meeting, rather than having it be kind of unveiled at the meeting, you're being more transparent rather than less. Does this rule foreclose that possibility?
The current rules, the current draft does not foreclose that possibility, and I also just want to be clear again, the Open Meetings Act prohibits adding anything substantively new, so a brand new item could not be added to the agenda after that 48-hour period.
No, I'm saying on a particular item. So if an item has been noticed appropriately, it's published before 48 hours, as I understand it, the Open Meetings Act is actually pretty loose on what that has to say. And then, during the course of continued discussions, it becomes clear that someone's going to introduce a specific amendment, let's say, to what's in the packet. That amendment could just be introduced in the meeting without any notice, but it's more transparent if that amendment gets published in a revision to the packet, let's say on Saturday afternoon. And we do that sometimes. So I guess my point is this language here shall not make any substantive alterations to the packet after 48 hours before the council meeting. Does that say, hey, we don't get to on Saturday afternoon update the packet and say this amendment might get introduced, or would that still be allowable under this rule?
Under the proposed amendment in the feedback document.
Correct.
I think that would not be permissible. But I invite anyone on council who's interested in
But just to
pursuing that
clarify,
amendment to
under the
clarify it.
rules as drafted.
Under the rules as drafted,
we
that
would be
is
okay.
permissible.
Okay. Is there any further discussion or a motion on 4C3? City Manager Stowe.
I just thank you, Councilmember Nusma, Chair Nusma. I want to confirm that there are occasions, relatively rare, where there might be a typo or maybe something didn't publish correctly, and we have to republish an agenda item where maybe like an attachment was missing. So I want to continue to have that flexibility to be able to do that. And I do think, to the mayor's point, doing that 36 hours in advance rather than in real time at the council meeting, I think allows the public and council and other stakeholders more time to digest those adjustments.
Right. Which we are allowed to do under the rules as drafted.
Correct.
Councilmember Burns and then Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that supported corrections could be an amendment, but supported documents also, and I think this also happens a lot, is if somebody just wants the council to have more information, like we're including more information for council to consider during a particular discussion, then someone may want that to be added to the packet after the 48-hour period. And I think we could probably get it done before the 40-hour period. We just have to figure out, like, what way does city manager, do you and your staff want that information submitted? Like, who should we send that to so that we have confidence that it will be included? But I just wanted to make that clear that, yes, it could be about amendments, but it also can just be, as it says, supporting documents that that council members want their colleagues to consider before voting on an issue.
Councilmember Kelly.
So do we need to move this item?
If somebody wants to make a change to the draft, a motion would be in order.
But if not, we'd be
wants to make a
looking
change,
at,
we're ready to keep going.
and we would just go ahead and vote on it. I mean, I'm sorry.
If you just don't say anything.
And then it goes through?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Right.
it stands as?
Yeah.
So
and
this
just,
would, so
just to
so I-
clarify, we are reviewing the
Right.
we are reviewing only those sections of the draft rules that at least one council member has offered some comment on.
Okay.
We are considering those comments, and should that council member or another council member want to make a motion to make a change, that motion would be in order, and we would vote on it tonight. We are not approving the rules in their entirety this evening.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we are, in fact, because it is definitely an issue where we're frequently presented with a lot of material, charts and graphs and new information on the evening that we're voting. Staff will bring things forward. So I just want to make sure that we are improving that somehow. So I understand that there would be exceptions, and it seems to me that you should have to state the exception or what the issue is or why it's urgent or why it had to be posted last minute. I think that's fine, but I think we should make sure that we are somehow amending the rules to.
I am interpreting some of the feedback from council as request or direction to staff regarding policy, but no motions on the underlying rule. So I'm going to move us along unless anybody wants to make a motion on 4C3. Okay, I will move us along to item 4D, which is agenda sequence and order of business. Does anybody wish to starting with staff, do we need any context or explanation for this one? Great. Does anybody want to make a suggestion for a change to the agenda sequence and order of business? Seeing none, going once, twice, three times, I'm going to move on.
Hold on, sorry. The hesitation was because I think I think what I added is not necessarily in this section. I wanted to, because is this adding or changing the order? Because I wanted to add something.
Yeah, Councilmember Burns, I believe you might be referring to moving call of awards up on the agenda or a public announcement.
Yes, sir.
Right, and that is, now is the time to consider that.
Okay, hold on, because I don't see it. I don't know why I don't see it in here. Can somebody tell me where? Some staff tell me where it, because I don't see where it is. It should be in red, right?
It's on
page 8.
46 of 51 or 58 of 63 of what I'm looking at, but that's from last time. So somebody help me out with it.
So, Councilmember, your original recommendation was on the consent agenda that we took off, and it was on, if you're looking at just the packet that has the feedback, that was on page 3, and it's letter K. And we took it off the consent agenda last time and said we would talk about it in this section. Does that help?
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. I don't have it in front. Main thing is I just wanted to make sure everybody else had it in front of them because it's, and I don't know staff, because I can't find it if somebody could read it, but I spelled it out very clearly. Again, I think I said 45 seconds in that. Again, it's all written down in one of these drafts. And the idea being that I don't, other than to communicate to the media and the few community members that still remain in the meetings, at the hour that we get out, it doesn't seem like Call the Ward serves any other purpose in that. And so what I wanted to do is either move Call of the Wards after, I think it was city clerk comments from the city clerk. It would require, we would only be allowed 45 seconds. We'd have to, in my referral, we would stick to,
45 seconds.
we would still have, I think my referral, we kept Call of the Wards at the end, but we added something new that said like communications of council, because it was very clear that during the 45-second period at the beginning of the meeting, we're not supposed to talk about anything on the agenda, anything legislative. It's an opportunity for us to talk about ward meetings, to announce ward meetings, to talk about like community meetings that are happening at the top of the meeting. And then if we wanted to talk about legislative items, we can do that during Call of the Wards at the end. So I think really what my motion was to add communications from city council members with restrictions. And all the restrictions are spelled out in the information that I provided. I can't find it now.
Right, it is right in front of us. It's on page 8 of the feedback. It's the third bullet point under this item. So we should all have the text right in front of us.
And I spoke to Manager Stowe about this, Mayor Biss, to better understand what their concerns might be. The obvious ones being no one wants this to drag on at the top of the meeting, which I understand is different to give a mayor, one person, a mayor, a clerk, and a city manager time, the endless amount of time in a sense. It's one thing to give 9 council members that, which is why I limited it would limit it to 45 seconds. It would restrict us to talk about, very specific things, not things that are on the agenda or legislative. And I think it's a way for us to communicate to the public about upcoming board meetings and other events while the meeting is full and people are actually there. So, I would make a motion to make that change again, to add, well, I don't know if anybody has any questions, comments, but my motion would be to add communications from city council members.
Yeah, public announcements by council members is the wording that we have
Public
in front of us.
announcements,
Limited to 45 seconds. So it's been moved by Councilmember Burns. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by, I think, Councilmember Hadakatis won the race there. So Councilmember Hadakatis, your light was on?
I was just going to say, I'm supportive of this. I do like the 45-second time limit. I think we can do this in a way that's not, doesn't drag out the meeting, but I second what Councilmember Burns says. Sometimes, I'm just talking to the press row up here, and so I would, like to be able to, tell people about office hours and ward meetings while they're here. So,
Councilmember Davis and then Mayor Biss.
This is a 45-second limit on Call of the Wards, correct?
What Councilmember Burns is proposing is an additional item on the agenda that will happen after the communications from the city clerk, and it will be called, won't take the place of Call of the Wards at the end of the meeting. It will just allow each council member 45 seconds to say, hey, my next ward meeting is going to be this date and time, and the office hours of this date and time, or come to the meeting for something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Betts.
I'm totally happy to support this. I just want to announce my intention to take the 45 seconds seriously, and maybe while we're at it, to begin taking the 5 minutes more seriously as well. Happy Independence Day, everybody.
All right, any other comment? Councilmember Isles.
Do we need the call of the wards if we have this? Like, I would say the same thing in both 45-second windows.
I think the idea is that by the time we get to call of the wards, it is often quite late.
Right.
And the information that we would like the community to hear would be better delivered earlier in the meeting.
I agree. I like I like it being moved up, but I don't see the point of keeping the call of the wards.
And Chair, if I could respond quickly.
Go ahead, Councilmember Burns, and then Kelly, and then Rogers.
It's just an effort, Councilmember Isles, if somebody wants to speak about a legislative issue, which happens, I've done it before during call of the wards, that you would still have that opportunity to do that at the end of the meeting. But the earlier period would have some restrictions in place that wouldn't allow for that.
Right. And I will also point out that the proposal is to introduce this agenda item, which would happen before public comment. So it would not be used as a means to respond to public comment. Councilmember Kelly, and then I believe it was Rogers.
So I would concur with Councilmember Isles. I feel that this would be a nice opportunity to shorten our meetings by having this replace the call of the wards and keeping it to 45 seconds. I think that would be a great amendment.
I think a motion would be in order, but there is one on the table right now to add this agenda item. So unless there's any further discussion on that motion, I will call for a vote on adding a public announcements by council members item to the standard agenda.
Councilmember Isles,
Yes.
Mayor Biss,
Yes.
Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin, Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to nothing, that motion passes. Are there any other motions relevant to agenda sequence and order of business? There, seeing none, we are going to move on. Councilmember Suffredin.
Is this a spot where we should make a motion to eliminate call of the wards? So I would make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Suffredin, seconded by Councilmember Kelly, that we eliminate call of the wards at the end of the council meeting. Is there any discussion on this item? Councilmember Davis.
Is there a time limit on call of the wards currently? Oh, okay. Well, I will note that I don't plan on eliminating call of the wards, but I would be up for putting a time restriction on call of the wards additionally, if anyone wants to make that motion. But I don't really care much either way, so I'm not going to make it.
Councilmember Harakaris.
I think it's important for us to keep call the wards at the end. I do support a time limit. I think 45 seconds is probably too short, maybe 2 minutes. As much as I respect the press's time, and but it is important for us to have an opportunity to say something on the record if we so feel the need at the end of the meeting.
Any other discussion on the motion to eliminate call of the wards? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Isles,
Yes.
Mayor Biss,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma,
No.
Councilmember Burns,
No.
Councilmember Suffredin,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
No.
Councilmember Rogers,
No.
Councilmember Harakaris,
No.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a very close vote of 6-4, that motion fails. Call of the wards will remain on the agenda. Councilmember Sufford.
I move that we institute a 2-minute limit on call of the wards time.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Suffredin, seconded by Councilmember Hadakaris, that we impose a 2-minute limit on call of the wards. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call on that.
Councilmember Isles?
Yes.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
And Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a vote of 8-2, that motion passes, and call of the wards will be limited to 2 minutes at the end of the agenda. So any other motions on Section 4D, agenda sequence or order of business? Seeing none, we will move on. We are now entering into Roman numeral 5, conduct of meeting, starting with Section A, decorum. Is there any discussion from staff, any context or illumination? There is none. Does anybody wish to make a motion regarding Section 5A, decorum? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to Section 5E, which is public comment. And we are going to start with 5E to 5E1, just to be fair. There was a suggestion that we provide bilingual public comment. Councilmember Hadakaris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be writing up a referral for this because I think it's really important that we have a well-thought-out process for bilingual access for all folks, not just Spanish speakers. I think we are one of the most diverse communities when it comes to language. So I'll be working on this. And so if anyone wants to be a co-refer, we'll get this going soon, and we'll find some best practices, because I think there's some things we can do with leveraging staff, and there's also some pretty cool translation tools. So we don't have to limit ourselves to just the quote unquote easy translation languages.
And so with that pending referral, no need to revise the minutes this evening. Let's move on to Section 5E3, which is time limits. Does anybody wish to make a motion on 5E3 time limits? And this is 5E is public comment, so time limits during public comment. Councilmember Rogers and then Councilmember Kelly.
I don't have a motion, which I know frustrates you, Councilmember Nusma.
As somebody who has opposed points of information.
I know. I'm very much a procedural person, but sometimes this is the only place we can really have an honest discussion as well. I had put in this comment about sort of breaking our public comment into two sections. I don't know how anybody else feels about this. Allotting the first public comment time to people who are there to address items on the agenda that evening, and then retaining a public comment later for anybody who wants to address us about anything. I think it's unfair to people who are coming to speak to us about matters on the agenda to have their time eaten up by people who want to talk about things that are not necessarily on the agenda that evening, that may be coming down the road 2 months from now, 3 months from now. And so I don't know if there's an appetite for this, if anybody sees any benefit to it, but I at least wanted to throw it out there as a discussion point.
Council member, so that was not a motion.
Not a motion.
It sounded like a request to maybe second a motion. So Councilmember Kelly, and then Davis, and then Hadakatis.
So I think it's an interesting motion and worth discussing.
There's not a motion.
Not a motion, I'm sorry, not a motion, a non-motion. But I do, some city councils have it so that the public comments are made before each item, which I think is also another way to address this. So whatever item you're speaking to, the public comments occur before that item, so they're more relevant and timely. So I just want to put that idea out there too. I agree that I do think no matter what we do with the 45-minute time limit, there should be a however. Nobody would ever be restricted to speaking for less than 1 minute. I think it's absurd to have public comment where people are allowed 30 seconds or 45 seconds, but that's kind of a separate issue. I do understand the problem that if you have a lot of people coming to speak and many of the people who are addressing the issues on the table, and if we're restricting it to 45 minutes and they're, reduced to 1 minute on topics that are to be voted on because of other comments, that it's a problem. So I do think we should address it.
If you'd like to make a motion, there's a magic word you need to say.
Right. Well, I would like to make at least a motion that nobody's ever allotted less than 1 minute. So we set whatever our time limit is. That's separate. That's somewhat separate from Councilmember Rogers' proposal, but I don't think we should be. I'd like to make a motion that nobody ever be allotted less than 1 minute. So if it means we have to go over 45, sometimes we would, by ensuring that everyone's allotted at least never less than 1 minute.
Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that motion.
It's been moved by Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Rogers, that each member of the public may be making public comment be offered no less than 60 seconds. Is there any discussion on this item? And I see that Councilmember Davis, Hadakatis, and Burns had their hands up before this motion was on the table. We'll get to those three council members in turn, but is there any discussion on this motion?
I have a question.
Question from Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, for city council, our state
Corporation
lawyer,
counsel.
corporation counsel, thank you. If someone cedes time during city council meetings, we don't have to abide by that, right? So if someone wants to cede their time to someone else?
So I believe there's a current rule that does not allow people to cede time.
Oh, okay. And then my next question is for this thing about the 50 or 100 signatures,
Can we limit discussion right now for the motion on the table? We'll come back to that one, unless it's relevant to this.
kind of determines whether or not I would do this one, but sure, I can wait. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Good.
Any discussion on the motion on the table, which is to offer each member of public up to, or no less than a minute for public comment? Seeing no further discussion, I will call the roll on that.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss? Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakatis?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
And Councilmember Harris?
By a vote of 8-0, that motion passes. Public comment will not be, will be at least a minute for everybody. Now, back to Councilmember Davis, and then Hadakatis, and then Burns. Any other motions on the public comment section of the rules?
I see the seating time is the next one, and I'm sorry. I can wait until we get there.
Okay. Yeah, so we're talking about E3, which is the time limit. Councilmember Hadakatis.
So I appreciate Councilmember Rogers' suggestion about restructuring the time frame for the different. The one thing I think we would run into issues is there's many times there's people who are maybe speaking to something that's not on the agenda and they think it's on the agenda or so I don't know how you vet that at the beginning and sort it out. But that's maybe something because I think there's kind of, our meetings are not the most easy thing to understand. So I think maybe if we work on it, we could get to that. But I think that might cause.
Without a motion, we don't need a non-second. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, my comment was about that as well, so I'll hold off unless there's a motion. But I also got the sense that he was trying to see if there was a point of trying to make a motion. So I don't know if comments help with that, but I'll rest for that.
Basically, I just wanted to raise the issue and see if there was an appetite even for discussion on it. As opposed to making a motion, because I think it's premature to make a motion on it at this particular moment because there are many logistics that have to kind of be figured out. But it was more so raising that question, that issue. This is similar to, at land use, we often would take public testimony. It's a slightly different situation for each individual case. But then we had provided a public comment at the end for anybody who wanted to talk to us about anything. And since we often are running into situations where we have, 50 people sign up and everybody's being
Councilmember Rogers, if I could discreetly and politely move this discussion along. I have some thoughts on this particular matter, but in compliance with my own rules, there not being a motion.
I was just going to request that anybody who would like to discuss this further, please to reach out to me.
Very good. Okay. Councilmember Burns?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on now to seating time, which is E3. I'm sorry, E4. And Councilmember Davis, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, I wanted to make the motion that speakers should be allowed to cede their time to other speakers so long as they are physically or virtually present.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Councilmember Kelly, that we allow speakers to cede time to other speakers. Is there any discussion on this item? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I just wonder, does that create a vacuum where I can get 10 of my friends just to be on to allow me to have more time when I really didn't have anything to say? But with this, I now have 10 minutes of the floor, and we've just increased everyone to be able to speak a minute. So I take exception with this, and we'll be voting no.
Anybody else want to weigh in? I will weigh in. I feel similarly to Councilmember Harris. Public comment is nobody's favorite time of the meeting. It is not the time that council members should first be hearing about concerns from our constituents. We are all available by email. Many of us have board meetings, office hours, and public comment is absolutely the right of members of the public to petition their government. It's a First Amendment right, but we need to be able to get through it in a manner that's fair to everybody in the community, fair to members of the public that attend council meetings, and respectful of everybody's time. So if there's no further discussion on that motion, and just to restate the motion is to allow speakers to cede their time to other speakers. No further discussion on that. I will call a roll on that one.
Councilmember Isles?
No.
Mayor Biss? Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a vote of 6-2, that motion fails, and we will move on to item, where are we? 10, council member participation. So this is 5E10. council member participation. Does anybody have anything they would like to do with this section? Councilmember Rogers.
I would like to amend this so that it reads, during public comment, council members and the mayor shall not comment or respond. Again, this kind of goes back to, we are kind of loose in when we refer to council members, and it includes the mayor, and when it doesn't include the mayor. So this is just more of a clarification. If that's the policy, then that should be the policy. So that is a motion.
That is a motion by Councilmember Rogers.
And I'll second.
It was seconded by Councilmember Harikaris, and the motion is to add the mayor to the rule that says during public comment, council members and the mayor shall not comment or respond except to request information or assistance from the city manager. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that item?
I would just add that this is not the intent, that the mayor obviously still retains the prerogatives of being chair to tell people they're over their time, to tell people that they need to leave, whatever the mayor feels is appropriate at that time. That's not what this is intended to do, is to remove that authority. He still retains the right as chair. Oops.
Anybody else want to weigh in here? Mayor Biss?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't think I've ever done it.
No,
I've often cringed as others have tried to, in fact. So yeah, I'm cool.
I think the one time I can recall that the mayor did respond to public comment was when there was very inappropriate public comment, and the mayor's response at that time, I think, is very much in line with his power and authority to chair the meeting and maintain order and decorum. So it's not Councilmember Rogers' intent, nor the intent of this motion to take that prerogative away from the mayor. Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harikaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
By a motion, I had 8 to nothing. By a vote of 8 to nothing, that motion passes. We will move on to Section 5F, Special Orders of Business, noting the pin that Councilmember Rogers previously put in this item with some text that was earlier in the packet. So now is the time to make any motions on special orders of business. I'm going to start by looking to staff to see if we need any guidance or context. There is no guidance or context from staff. Are there any motions regarding special orders of business? I'm hearing the Jeopardy song in my head. And it was interrupted by Councilmember Kelly's light.
So I'm contemplating these 4 bullet points, correct?
Well, 5, including the other one that was earlier.
What's the fifth
1,
one?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I guess.
Okay, can you restate the 2 that aren't listed here?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points in this section in the consolidated feedback. To those 5 points, we are adding one from section 4B1, which is placing items on the agenda. Allowing 3 council members rather than a majority to place a special item of business on the agenda. That was the bullet in which a pin was placed. I'll offer the following comment. The draft rules allow 3 council members to call a special meeting. That's something we haven't discussed. So that is the current rules, and it remains in the draft of the revision. So With that context, does anybody wish to make any motions regarding special orders of business? Councilmember Rogers.
I would move that the language in special orders of business at the end read, "A special order of business may be placed on the agenda at the request of the mayor or by 3 members of city council."
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Kelly, that we allow 3 members rather than a majority of city council to add a special order of business to the agenda. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Rogers?
I would just say this kind of is in keeping with the ability to call a special meeting. It's kind of the same idea that 3 members are enough without getting a majority of members to do it.
Mayor Biss.
I'm just curious, the status quo is that a majority can do it by a vote in an open meeting. Would the 3 be, someone would make a motion and the motion passes if it has 3 yes votes and 6 no's?
I mean, my understanding.
In my head.
Oh, go ahead. Councilmember Burns.
No, go ahead.
Let's Councilmember Rogers and then Councilmember Burns.
I mean, I would understand this as traditionally being the request of 3 council members requesting to the mayor that an item be put on as a special order of business. Not that it be voted on in a meeting, because that would not make sense to allow a majority vote to not win in that case. So similarly to the way in which 3 council members have the ability to write to the mayor and request a special meeting, it would be the same process of 3 members writing to the mayor saying, we would like an item XYZ being added on as a special order of business.
Just to clarify, both our current operative rules and the draft before you say that a special order of business placed by city council members has to be by a majority vote in open session of the city council. So it would be helpful direction to staff if there's also a request to change the process by which that motion is made and have it be in writing or some other mechanism.
Right.
Yeah, I think the chair would entertain a friendly amendment.
I would amend my motion to read, "A special order of business may be placed on the agenda at the request of the mayor or by 3 members of the city council in written request to the mayor." Does that work for you?
So that was moved by Councilmember Rogers and seconded by, I'm not sure who it was.
I think Councilmember Kelly was the.
Okay, so that motion is amended. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I think I would need to know how we're defining, what constitutes a special order of business. I think, so that's the first thing. I think it's fair also to think about whether or not the role of mayor can abuse their ability to place an item on special order of business. That's fine. What I do know is that this will be abused as written. And whereas no one wants to go to another meeting if they don't have to, let's be honest. So that is not abused, which is why I don't think we need to change the ability, the 3-member ability to hold a special meeting. Whereas, again, I feel this would be abused. It would circumvent the referral, unless we had clear definitions that we could all agree on. It would essentially be a way where people could circumvent the referrals committee, making that useless. And so unless I'm misunderstanding something, I would not support this.
Mayor Biss.
And my light was not actually just still on, but I just completely agree with Councilmember Burns. I think it would be either used very rarely or else just a totally impractical way to run a city council, to have a third of the council be able to at any time put anything they want on the agenda. I think it would be frankly very chaotic.
Councilmember Rogers, is your light still on?
No, my light's newly added.
Okay. Over to you, sir.
I would just respond to that by saying, I think if the special order of business process is clearly defined, and what a special order of business truly is, that's what prevents the abuse. Is clearly following how do we define that? And I don't know where that falls in our rules. I know that, I think we made a request that that be one of the definitions included at the beginning, so I think that will come back to us at some point in the future.
Councilmember Davis and then Councilmember Kelly.
Yes, I have a question for staff. So just to clarify, we do not have a definition for special orders of business, because it seems to me they should be for emergencies more so, right?
There is currently not a definition for special order of business. One of the items on the consent agenda that you all voted on at our last meeting was adding a definition.
What definition do we have in mind?
If the committee has direction on what that definition should be like, that would be helpful.
Okay, so it would help if we gave gave direction like right now-ish.
The request was to add a definition. There weren't specific draft language on what that definition should be like.
But you said you would like staff direction. It's not what you just said?
Yeah, council has previously directed staff to add a definition without specifying the wording of that definition.
Correct.
Staff is at this time asking for guidance and willing to accept suggestions as to what that definition should be.
Correct.
And how do you want to receive that guidance, like via email? Or my question is, the guidance, would you like it now while we're meeting during Rules Committee, like since we're talking about the relevant topic, or do we email? Like, how are we providing guidance? Whichever of you.
Either would be fine.
Okay, all right. Well then, I don't know, this is,
Just to be clear, either way, the definition would return to this body for a vote.
okay. I think that while we're on the topic, I would like to discuss what the definition is, and I think that it should be for emergencies. Otherwise, I don't know why we wouldn't just use regular city council meetings. I know that that's an obvious one, but when we're talking about not having unnecessary meetings, to Bobby's point, and to making sure that there's some rationale, I'm not exactly sure what other rationale there would be for a special meeting if it were not for something considered an emergency. So,
Special meeting or special order of business? Yeah,
special order of business, yeah. Because, yeah, special order of business. I'm actually also, I'll be honest, I'm not sure why we have a difference for special meeting and special order business. I kind of think it should probably be about the same. But I'm going to make a motion that special order businesses be for emergencies.
I'll second that.
All right, so there is a motion on the table regarding a definition of a special order of business. Is this in line with our rules? I suppose it could be. Councilmember Harikadis and then Kelly.
So we haven't dealt with Councilmember Rogers' motion that's on the table. So we're jumping ahead, so we should.
Thank you for that point of order. So the motion on the table is, as amended, to allow 3 members of the city council to request in writing a special order of business be added to the agenda. So that motion is on the table. Is there any further discussion on that motion? And then we'll move on.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of, I think, the vote on the second part will be contingent upon that discussion, I move to table my motion until this other matter is addressed.
May I suggest you just withdraw it and reinstate it?
I can do that as well. I'm trying
That'll
to
be
follow
easier.
proper procedure, but if you'd prefer.
If you move to table, then we need to vote on the table.
Right.
And it's
So
just-
I would withdraw, I would suspend my motion, withdraw my motion until such time as the discussion on special
All right,
order of
so
business begins.
that motion is off the table. I suspect it will come back, which now goes to Council Member Harikadis, because your light is on.
Yeah, I think it would be good to know, and maybe, I'm not sure if should have probably asked about this before, but I think the term emergency is a little bit subjective. I think time sensitive might be a little bit better wording, but I think from where I sit, when it's very subjective whether or not something needs to be addressed right away. I have things, and this is like why I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the 3-person threshold for a special order of business to kind of, I think this kind of goes hand in hand. There are a lot of legislative items that if it's your legislative item, like there are times when like I have a referral and then, you know, I'm told that staff like, well, we'll get to it in October. Like I wish we would get to it sooner. And so there's a subjective nature from all of us up here as to what needs to be done first. And I think emergency is, I think times, even things that are time sensitive, we've had people up here that like, yeah, I don't think we need to address it right away. So it's, I don't know exactly how we define it. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder, and I think we have to keep that in mind. So,
Councilmember Kelly, and then Burns, and then back to Davis.
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad that you tabled that or held it back. Again, I think we can't vote on that until we have a definition, and we should not be discussing what emergency or urgent. There are so many definitions out there. I've been through many municipal codes that define it. I would ask that staff come back with various definitions of what constitutes an emergency or an urgent matter or a time, you know, because this is, many cities have provisions where they can bring things to a vote or bring things up, you know, urgent, in a matter of an emergency. So I don't think right now it would be silly for us to all debate. I think we should see other definitions by other cities when they classify an item on an agenda as urgent. Otherwise, I think we could be here for hours debating that. So I would ask that staff, I seconded Councilmember Davis's motion to that special orders of business are used for emergencies. And I think if something's timely, it's timely because it's an emergency. I mean, anything could be timely, but it should fall under whatever we would agree on as a definition of emergency. So again, I ask that we're provided with, you know, some examples of what constitutes municipal emergencies.
Councilmember Burns, and then Mayor Biss, and then Councilmember Davis, and then Councilmember Hurtado.
So as it stands, does the role of mayor, does it have the ability to put something on the agenda outside of the referrals or a special order of business process? Based on what's being proposed or what's already adopted in our rules? Or not just proposed, but what we've already supported, I guess. I don't know. Is that?
Yes, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but we did discuss this earlier, and the mayor does retain the ability to put something on the agenda. Have we clarified
Through
that?
the special order business process or just period? Just for no reason? Just.
I'm sorry, let me ask staff to weigh
So
in.
what you all voted on earlier says that the mayor can place a legislative item on the agenda if it has gone through referrals, and the mayor may place any administrative or non-legislative item on the agenda, which in our case tends to be things like contracts. So any policy, so currently no, the only two ways are through the referrals committee or a special order of business based on what you all just discussed earlier tonight.
Okay, cool. That's helpful. Yeah, I
That
think
was
even,
voted down,
I
right.
mean,
Wait, let's just clarify.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
go
so
Where do we leave it?
So so it still says the mayor may place an item on the agenda just as it
Period.
stands. Yes.
Okay,
Just
so that's the way we
sentence.
left it.
That's the sentence.
Right, and at that point, Councilmember Rogers put a pin in it so we could have this conversation. All right, Councilmember Burns.
I'm sorry, that
Floor,
last
sir.
part. What was the last part? What was just said?
Yes, he can put anything on the agenda.
Without needing to go through referrals or special order?
Correct.
And did we vote on that, or is that just how we're interpreting the mayor's current?
That's very clearly how we left it about 20 minutes ago.
But I'm saying, is that because that's how staff is interpreting the mayor's current kind of powers and abilities, or is that, did we vote on it to
No,
make
it's
that?
because the sentence says the mayor may place an item on the agenda.
And that's already in our rules, is what I'm saying.
No, that's in the
not an
draft
amendment.
rules.
Yeah, that's in the.
That's in the draft rules.
Correct.
The draft revision, it's not in our current rules.
That's correct.
But we haven't voted on that yet.
We did.
Well, we
On an
discussed it.
alternative,
We voted
correct.
on an alternative, which was voted down, leaving the draft as drafted, being the working language moving forward.
Okay, cool.
Chair.
All right, that's helpful.
So,
And then the other piece before I'll end shortly is just I'm not comfortable moving forward even with the emergency. I want to put more time thinking about special order business and its the role it plays in our legislative process. I think it would be better to us to just submit just however we feel special orders should be used. And then, as staff has done for everything else, just come back with, some, language based on, where there seems to be support. But I'm certainly not ready to make that, decision today. I need more time personally, so I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. I forget what the order was here. I think it was Davis, Hadikoudis, Mayor Biss, and then Councilmember Kelly.
I just wanted to know, I wanted more clarification from Councilmember Hadikoudis as to what he thought the definition should be, or if he thinks there should be no restrictions at all. But since his time is next, I don't want him to use up all my time answering it. It seems like he was already ready to talk about a lot of stuff, so I will let him go on his turn.
Okay, Councilmember Hadikoudis.
Yeah, I think one thing I would like to see, because I think it sounds like no one's ready to vote and define this tonight. I think it'd be really helpful, and I hate to do this to staff, but to see a breakdown of actually how many special order businesses there have been in the last year. And I'd also encourage my colleagues, if there's any of them that you think was like an overstep, because from where I sit, I've never felt that there is something come up where I'm like, this is really inappropriate that we're discussing it this way. And I might be in the minority up here, but I think those examples would be helpful for the discussion and for kind of forming what we as a group all agree is like a acceptable use. Because I think there's probably a wide range of things that we think are acceptable. And like the examples used, earlier was like, the welcome and city ordinance, is, the civic center move. I think that was something like I personally felt was long overdue that we had to talk about and make a decision, but that's not what I don't think everyone would agree with me on that. So I think it'd be helpful for staff to compile that so we see the actual frequency and not have, because I don't think there's been that many special order businesses, and then we can see what the outliers are and see where we can come to agreement about what we think the right way to do things going forward is.
Mayor Biss and then Councilmember Kelly.
Mr. Chair, may I tell a story?
Please.
So,
Clock.
So about 12 years ago, I was in the legislature and I was interested in a particular issue that folks in the Oregon legislature were working on at the time. And they were working on a bill to create a task force studying the subject I was curious about. And I was like, ooh, I should go read that bill. So I went and read the bill in question, and the beginning of the bill says, declares an emergency, semicolon, creates a task force. And I thought, that's odd. It's an odd response to an emergency. And so I dug in and found the following passage of the Oregon Constitution, which is still in the books. It's section 28. It says, no act shall take effect until 90 days from the end of the session at which the same shall have been passed, except in case of emergency, which emergency shall be declared in the preamble or in the body of the law. And it turns out that because of this very well-intentioned concept that you can't have something go into effect immediately unless it's an emergency, all the bills in Oregon now say, hey, there's an emergency, and now we're going to pick a new state canoe, or now we're going to create a task force to study a topic. And so I want to make sure that whatever we do is real and actually affects the practice here rather than puts an additional nominal protection that will be irrelevant in practice.
All right. There is a motion on the table with a second to define a special order of business somehow involving the word emergency. We don't have language in front of us. And, as chair, I could enforce the rule to be consistent. We would want to see language in front of us. I think there is more discussion to be had on this issue than we are able to go into tonight. So what I would suggest it might be the most prudent course of action would be to withdraw that motion and do this homework before we convene, and then we will have some actual words and some actual information, as Councilmember Hakadas has suggested, before us, that we can make a more fully informed decision. So that would be my
I'll withdraw.
my suggestion. And Councilmember Davis has withdrawn the motion. Councilmember Rogers and Kelly, there is no motion on the table. So Councilmember Rogers. I'm sorry. Councilmember Kelly, I think I skipped you. So Councilmember Kelly and then Rogers. I'm sorry.
So I would just ask, while we're still contemplating special order of business between now and the next session, where we hopefully will have a definition of what constitutes, that there's restraint from placing any items as a special order of business between now and then.
I appreciate the question, and I commit to you that I will continue to show the restraint that I've always shown in this topic as mayor, and you're welcome.
Councilmember Rogers.
I would also just to throw one more little monkey wrench into the whole thing here. We have this new items for consideration thing, so I would like to know kind of how that fits into the whole mix as well.
We are
Because
about to get there,
Yep,
sir.
so just, I'm kind of
Okay.
tying the two somewhat together because I think the two kind of are cousins.
So there being no discussion yet to follow on the special order of business, or SOB section, I'm going to move on to section H, Roman numeral 5, section H, the consent agenda. Is there any motion on Roman numeral 5H? Okay, starting with some staff context. Thank you.
Thank you. So there were a number of questions about how this process in the new draft rules works, which may be an indication that it does not work particularly successfully. But I thought it might be helpful to try to offer a brief explanation of what we're trying to do here. And this is about the consent agenda process and the new items for consideration item on the agenda. So the draft rules are trying to address an issue with our current process, which is that by keeping everything on the consent agenda and only removing items at a council meeting, we're not giving members of the public, members of the council, and staff kind of transparent advance notice of what items will receive significant debate at a particular council meeting. And if you look at the agendas for most of our comparable communities in Illinois, they have a consent agenda and then they have kind of a regular agenda or items that they're going to be considering at greater length. So the way we structure our agenda by having everything on the consent agenda and then pulling things off at the council meeting is we're a little bit of an outlier. So the draft rules try to create a new agenda item called items for consideration, where things removed from the consent agenda in advance would appear. And then the rules also create a process where any council member may ask to remove an item from the consent agenda up until 24 hours before a meeting. Those items would be moved to the items for consideration section of the agenda. That's how the printed agenda on Monday morning would appear. And then it would be clear to everyone, it would give the public advance notice that the things under items for consideration will be discussed. Things on the consent agenda may not. After the 24 hours expires, members could still remove items from the consent agenda, but it would require a second. So it's just putting kind of a slight procedural nudge towards giving people advance notice of what's going to receive discussion. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the draft. That's what the draft is trying to do. And I think the question for the council is whether the kind of added transparency and advance notice gained by this process is worth possible confusion generated by having a two-tiered consent agenda process, or whether council prefers to stick with our current process, which I think may be the case based on the questions we received.
One point of clarification, as proposed, who would be making the judgment call that an item should be on the consent agenda or not?
So the agenda published on Thursday night would still have everything on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Any member could pull something off up until 24 hours before the council meeting. The printed agenda on Monday morning would have consent agenda items and items for consideration for the things that had been pulled off. Members could still pull things off up until the consent agenda has been voted on, but it would just require a second.
Right. I certainly have opinions. As chair, I will go last. I'll refer to Councilmember Kelly and then Councilmember Rogers.
So I would prefer to leave it as is. I feel like we do this very expediently. Usually in like less than a minute, we're pulling the items off. And also, otherwise, I just think, it is little time that we have to go through so many pages, and I think then to have us have to figure it out, which ones we're going to pull off, within 24 hours of the meeting, I think is putting even more on us to process. But I would also add, I've been to council meetings in Wilmette where they do something that seems much more resident-oriented, where they explain what the consent agenda is, and they even ask the residents after the council or the trustees have voted if they would like something pulled off to be discussed, which I would advocate for that. I think it's really nice for the residents, someone wants to know something or why people are voting the way they are, to be able to pull an item off.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. I don't see a problem with the two-tier. I do have a couple of concerns. The first one being 24 hours is 7 o'clock on Sunday evening. And so how does that work? Because really 5 o'clock on Friday is probably when you would like to see it, which is really just a couple hours or a day after we've received the packet. So I have a concern about that. I do have a concern about a second on the consent agenda because it no longer becomes a consent agenda if I want something removed and no one seconds it. I vote no on the consent agenda, therefore it is no longer a consent agenda. So that's a problem I see rising from that process because you would force council members to vote against the entire consent agenda because one item they would like to discuss can't be pulled off at that point.
To answer the first question, we've conferred with staff who are charged with preparing the packet and printing up the agenda, and they've said that Monday morning is doable.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because
No,
I'm doing
certainly
24
thought
hours
through that
back and I'm like,
particular
that's 7
wrinkle.
o'clock on Sunday evening. And then the other one, just I would not support having to get a second to pull something off at the meeting for a consent agenda item.
I mean, another potential way to address this would just be to encourage members to give advance notice of what items they intend to pull off.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who wants to weigh in on this for the first time before we go back to, before I weigh in and then Councilmember Kelly? I'm going to second what Councilmember Kelly said. I think the way we handle it currently is fairly straightforward and simple. I'm afraid if we change the rules as drafted, we would create confusion by releasing an agenda on Thursday that somehow is not the agenda that we actually follow when we meet Monday night. And I'm concerned that a change of agenda would lead to some confusion and accusations of lack of transparency. I think with the direction to council or the request to council that we let staff know as soon as possible if there are items we would like to remove from consent. That seems to me to be the most expeditious way through this. So if somebody would like to make a motion to keep things as they are, I think that would be in order. I see Councilmember Burns has his hand up. So I'm going to go to Councilmember Burns and then back to Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what would help, and I want to, give a shout out to Councilmember Davis and NUSMA for sending kind of questions in advance of the meeting. I would imagine that is very helpful for the two of you as well as staff. And if we're going to encourage anything, I think it's, that's something I even want to start doing in advance of the meeting, sending questions. Because I think that's what can lead to less things being taken off the agenda, less need for, discussion around as many items. And so I just wanted to shout that out. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. Anybody else? Councilmember Kelly is making a motion. I'm going to put words in your mouth unless you want to do it yourself.
Sure, no, that's fine. But I also just want to point out that deliberation is part of the democratic process, and the public wants to see deliberation. So we shouldn't be like I agree with, fleshing things out and getting as much information as you can, but we shouldn't be avoiding, at all costs, public deliberation. So, but yes, I'd like to make a motion to leave our consent agenda format as is.
It's been moved by Councilmember Kelly.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Rogers that we leave consent agenda as is, with the request of us as council members to provide any questions early in the process, and if there are items that we know for sure we want to remove from the consent agenda, to let staff know sooner rather than later. So any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll, please.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
No.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
By a vote of 8-1, that motion passes, and that motion was to leave the consent agenda as it is currently. Councilmember Hadakatis. That was from before? Okay. All right. Let's move on. With monovision right now, to parliamentary procedure. This is Roman numeral 6. There's a typo in the compiled feedback. It's actually 6B, items that council may consider. Is there any motion on that? Well, I searched for backup glasses, which are not present. The frame broke. I'm good. All right, so no discussion on item 6B. That will move us to 6, unless that was Councilmember Burns. Go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
No, just a quick question, Chair. As you did last meeting, do you have do you intend for us to meet for a certain duration tonight? I just wanted to do a kind of a time check to get a sense of how long we're going. And I'm open to whatever, but just want to
7 o'clock
know where we're at.
right now. How much time do we have left? Yeah, 4 more pages. So I think it would be prudent for us to finish this conversation tonight, which I don't see happening any earlier than 8 o'clock, but we are going to be reconvening to hopefully review and approve a final draft of these minutes at a later meeting. So this will not be the final meeting on this topic. I think it's worth slogging through this and getting this work done tonight.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
The read of the room here. So that's just a reminder to us to be expeditious in our conversation. So item 6D is where we are now. Motions and 6D motions, and then 6 lowercase m motions to reconsider is now the item on the table. Is there any staff comment on this one?
Yes, I think I just want to flag on this one that there are some staff concerns that changing our reconsideration process could create issues with finality of contracts or of legislation. Frequently, contracts or ordinances are signed, executed, signed into law the next day after council meetings. And so I think we would just want to be cautious to avoid any situation where, for instance, a vendor with the city wouldn't be able to rely on whether a contract was really executed or not until a subsequent meeting, or where the validity of a signed ordinance was called into question.
Okay, so staff is comfortable with the language as currently drafted, which is the same as it is in our current rules, correct? Okay, so are there any motions on the motion to reconsider? Councilmember Kelly.
I'm sorry, I haven't found it here yet, but I would like to see it return to the way it was prior to the last term, where any motion can be brought back for reconsideration by anybody who voted on the prevailing side. I think otherwise it really doesn't have much meaning. I think mostly the opportunity to bring it back for reconsideration is you vote on something, it comes out in the media, you hear from your constituents, you get more information, you bring it back. I think this has rarely caused any big upheaval, but I think it's an important opportunity for further discussion, and who knows, maybe, new information is brought forward and a council member is able to convince the others that were on the prevailing side that it really shouldn't have gone that way. I think having to bring something back for reconsideration during the very same meeting is, almost pointless. You're on to the next item, then you think, oh, you're supposed to be still thinking about the last item that you voted on to bring it back. So I think either we have no reconsideration or it should be returned to the way it was prior to the previous term.
Councilmember Rogers, followed by Mayor Biss.
Thank you. I had made sorry, I keep flipping my light on after you flip it off.
I do it differently than the mayor does. I leave them on to remind myself to call on you.
All right. So I have problems with us not being able to reconsider outside of the existing meeting. I understand staff's concerns. Obviously, once a contract is executed, it should not be reconsidered. Matter should not be reconsidered. I could see two ways to move forward with this that I'm comfortable with. One being changing the language to such a motion must be made at the same or the next regularly scheduled meeting. A motion to reconsider cannot be used if the original motion's provisions have been partially carried out, if the vote resulted in irreversible actions, or if a contract has been made and the other party has been notified, which is the language in the bullet point. The other option that I would be comfortable with is allowing a motion to be made to reconsider at that same meeting, but for the discussion to occur at the next meeting. So if there is additional information that needs to be obtained, if there's more research that needs to be done, that the motion to reconsider be made at, say, tonight's meeting, and the actual would appear on the agenda again at the next regularly scheduled meeting. No action would take place whatsoever on that until the reconsideration was done. But I'm sure that is not what some people want. So I will let the mayor speak to this, and then I won't make a motion at this point yet.
Mr. Mayor.
Or anybody else who has signed up to speak.
So I'm intrigued by your second suggestion. I'll speak to it second. I think allowing a motion to reconsider to be made at a subsequent meeting is a very bad idea. I appreciate that the modifications proposed by Councilmember Rogers mitigate how bad an idea it is, but what item that we vote on is not been remotely for what item that we vote on have no steps toward implementation whatsoever been taken by the next meeting 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later. I just think, ordinances, we get 2 votes. Most items go through committee. I feel like we should do our homework and only vote for things that we believe in. And the idea that a final vote can be undone a month later just strikes me as asking for trouble across the board. Now, I think Councilmember Rogers' second suggestion is perfectly reasonable and consistent with the current rule, right? Because if a motion to reconsider passes, then the item's back before us again, and a motion to table would be in order at that point. So you pass it, someone on the voted yes makes the motion to reconsider, the motion to reconsider passes, then you say, I move to table this to our next regular meeting. Bam, done.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, what Mayor Biz just said is what I was going to say. I thought that was already how our rules work, is that you can make a motion to reconsider, in a meeting, and it would either appear in the same meeting, I guess, or if it was tabled, it would appear in the next meeting. I couldn't support this. I mean, I think one of the things that I learned from, it may have been Councilmember Nusma, the acquisition of the property on Main, is that if there was no action taken, essentially, like we're not acquiring anything, we voted to not acquire anything, so everything is like status quo, then something like that can already be brought back if there's support, I guess, from enough council members or even the chair. It can be put back on an agenda. And so I think we have something to address that scenario. So really what we're saying is if there's an action, if there's an action to be taken by the vote, then how are we to deal with that? And I agree with the mayor. I think we need to come prepared to vote on things in that meeting, to use our ward meetings and 2 readings and every opportunity we have to get feedback from the public, so we're prepared to make a decision when we meet on council. That's the point. That's the most important part of this role, is for us to prepare ourselves to vote on things during council. And I think we need to continue to take that seriously and be prepared to do our work. And again, if we want to consider during the meeting, I think that's appropriate and already allowed within the current rules.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. Before going to Councilmember Rogers for something more than the first time, let me weigh in here and also point out that should we find ourselves in a position where we've passed an ordinance that one or more of us subsequently come to the conclusion we should not have passed, there currently exists a mechanism to undo that through a referral, to nullify that ordinance or to undo that work through the same process and procedure that we originally passed that ordinance. So if we ever do find ourselves in an oops situation, we have a mechanism to undo that. So I am comfortable with the rules as drafted. I'll go to Councilmember Rogers.
I have 2 quick little comments here. First off, where did we end up on the mayor being able to vote in a 4-3? We did not give the mayor the ability to vote in a 4-3 vote, did we?
My recollection, although I will have to go back and check the tape, is that we agreed to use the exact same language that's in the current state statute.
So we did give the mayor the vote or not? Okay, I just was, because that leads into
The
some
current
of
state
this.
statute permits the mayor to vote in a 4-3 situation where there's a vacancy in city council.
Okay, but not if we just happen to have someone not at the dais.
Correct.
Or someone
Has recused themselves.
has recused themselves
Correct.
or something like, okay, because that plays into this as well, because if we end up with a 4-3 vote and we need 5 for any legislation to pass, that would be a motion to reconsider at some point in the future to try to pass that. Second thing, Mr.
No, I do not think that the 4 side of that counts as prevailing.
It doesn't, that's what I'm saying. Well, it would be, is it prevailing as in
It's
they
prevailing
must
if
win
your thing,
majority?
I think it's prevailing if the thing you wanted to have happen happened, not if you got more votes than the bad guys.
Nobody's bad. All right, so that, a little bit of clarification. So, Mr. Mayor, a question for you. I fully support the idea that you came up with. Would you support a motion to reconsider with a date and not having to table? So if I were to say, I move to reconsider this matter at our January 23rd, 2025 meeting of City Council,
So basically rolling the two motions into one?
Basically, yes.
It doesn't bother me. It wouldn't necessarily be my
Because I
preferred
can
choice,
live-
but
I can
if
live
that
with- I
gets
can live
everyone
with
comfortable,
that.
it doesn't bother me.
I can live with that. I don't want us to have to go through two votes if we can accomplish it in one vote.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
So, so that would be an alternative that I could live with, so that a motion could be made at a meeting to reconsider at a date-specific meeting, preferably the next meeting.
Or it could be the current meeting.
It could be the current meeting, although voting to reconsider at the current meeting is kind of odd sometimes.
Well, I think there's two reasons you might reconsider. One is you got more information and changed your mind, and then you'd want to reconsider immediately and vote it down. And one is you got more information, which made you realize you want even more information,
Right.
and then you reconsider to table. Those
Right,
are both
it's just-
things
it's
that might
just-
happen
Yeah,
in the
it's just
world.
while we're sitting here, new information coming to me isn't really helpful. So I guess the motion that I would make, and I will make a motion that, do I have a motion on the floor now?
There is no motion on the floor.
Okay, I can't remember. So I would make a motion that says, such a motion must be made at the same meeting to reconsider at the next meeting with a date specific added. And then again, put in the same restrictions that it can't be carried out if anything's been carried forth, which hopefully nothing will be under that direction. You're looking at me.
I'm a little bit confused as chair. You said the next meeting at a date specific.
So such a
Those are-
meeting must be made at the same meeting to reconsider at the next regularly scheduled meeting of city council. And then also putting in a motion to reconsider cannot, hopefully none of that stuff will have happened. I don't know if it's necessary.
Right, so your motion is to add to make the sentence read as follows. Such a motion must be made at the same meeting to be heard at the next
reconsider-
regularly scheduled council
To be
meeting.
reconsidered at
To
the
be
next regularly
reconsidered at the
scheduled
next
meeting.
regularly scheduled council meeting. So that's the motion. Is there a second? I don't hear a second.
Well, I'm just not really clear on this.
Can I offer a friendly amendment, which may be deemed unfriendly, but what I said I was okay with was different than what you just said. So let me say in precise language what I said I was okay with, what I meant to say I was okay with. So I would propose amending M, motion to reconsider, to say, purpose to permit a subsequent vote on a motion which has previously been voted upon. A motion to reconsider must be made by a member who voted on the prevailing side of the vote to be considered. Such a motion must be made at the same meeting and must state the date at which the reconsideration will occur. And then the rest is as currently written.
I think we're kind of saying the same thing. You're just asking for the date. to
I'm
be
saying you say the
included.
date. It might mean right now.
Right.
It might mean the next meeting. It might mean
And
in the year 3046.
And that's fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so the motion.
I
has
think we're
been-
saying the same thing, just not exactly the same thing. So,
There's a Venn diagram here, but I think you have accepted the friendly amendment to your motion.
yes.
So is it clear what the motion
Yes, but I just have
now
one
is?
question before I
Okay.
second it. So what is the value, since you're not going to gather more information at the same meeting, of making this, precluding this from happening at the subsequent meeting?
Because
What
I
is your?
I think it's up to the person making the motion to reconsider to make the determination, I need 2 weeks to gather additional information so I can reconsider, so that we can reconsider this vote.
But you're not, it's during the same meeting. You've just voted for something you thought you were for, so how are you going to gather additional information to make you think you would like to reconsider at the same
So
meeting?
what it would be was, so we vote on something, I'm prevailing, issues have come up, whatever, and I can make the motion then to reconsider it at the next meeting, giving us time to get additional information.
So it's similar to a hold.
Similar, yes,
How is it different?
because the vote's been taken.
Well, it's, in practice, no different than the rule exists currently, because the rule allows a motion to be tabled for the reasons or as written, and then a council member would be allowed to table it until a date certain. So
But
it's
we aren't
effectively no
tabling- We aren't
different.
tabling, though. The motion to reconsider rolls the table
Right.
into
So it
the
just
motion to
accomplishes
reconsider.
two things at once, that
Exactly.
those two things are already doable,
Yes.
even absent the proposed amendment passing.
But what we're changing is that the motion to reconsider, the discussion can occur at a subsequent meeting.
That is not my understanding. The motion to reconsider would be made at a meeting and would have to be, that motion would have to be voted on at that meeting, and that's it, right?
The substantive discussion.
The substantive discussion to, once you agree to reconsider it,
Right.
that motion might not pass. But if the motion to reconsider passes, then that reconsideration would happen at the date specified.
Yes.
Right, so, okay, we are.
It's my attempt at a compromise here.
Okay.
You know,
So there's a motion on the table. Is there a second for this motion?
again, I don't think it falls in this with the spirit of what reconsideration is, again, because I just want to say, and I'm going to second it because if it improves it a little bit, any of this process, I will second it, but when you make a motion to reconsider, you then have a chance to talk to council members. Between time, you get information from your constituents. But it's very unlikely, if you're going to make a motion to reconsider, then that you're going to get, and you're on the prevailing side, it's nearly impossible that you're going to have a majority vote with you then to have it brought back for reconsideration. I mean, it's pretty much a null.
Right, so the
Well,
motion.
because it's at the same, it's during the same meeting. So you would be making.
When you change your mind, you've got your 5 votes.
If it passes 5-4 and you want to reconsider, if it's a close vote, I guess, okay. So I will second that motion.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded, and Mayor Biss, if I could ask you to restate that motion.
You can ask. Too bad this is being videotaped. So it would be to add the following words at the end of the second sentence of M1. So that's the sentence that ends, a third sentence. So the third sentence currently reads, such a motion must be made at the same meeting. I would extend that sentence so it now reads, such a motion must be made at the same meeting and include the date at which the reconsideration shall occur.
With that clarification and seeing no further discussion on this motion, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Also doing minutes here. Okay. Okay, Councilmember Isles.
Yes.
Mayor Biss.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
What is the motion on the table?
To add to the third sentence the language which the mayor just said, which he can say again if he wants to.
Yes, please.
This is like a cognitive psychology experiment.
Which is-
So the language will be something like, and include the date at which the reconsideration shall occur.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Could I get the mayor to restate? No, just kidding. Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
And Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
By a vote of 9-0, that motion passes. And without any further discussion on this motion to reconsider section, I am going to move along to the next item, which is Roman numeral 6, section G, debate. In subsection 1, opportunity to speak. Does anybody wish to make a motion, or does staff wish to offer some illumination to this particular item? Councilmember Rogers.
I would move adding the additional language. The council member making the motion shall be given the first right to speak on the motion, and the council member making the second shall be given the next opportunity to speak. Then the floor will be open to others wishing to speak. This is giving the people who are making the motion. And I would hope, there seems to be sometimes either a very mad rush to make a motion or crickets that occur up here. Obviously, if it's something in someone's ward, I would hope we would give deference to those people to make the motions and be able to address that for their ward. But the idea is that the people making the motion are given first and second opportunity to speak.
There's
I
a
would
motion
second
on the
that.
table by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Is there
Yeah.
any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll on this motion.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton? Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
By a vote of 9-0, that motion passes, and we will move on to section 6G2, which is time limits. Is there anybody who wishes to make a motion regarding time limits? This is during council debate. Councilmember Rogers.
I guess mine is more of a question because I don't pay attention to these sorts of things. Does the mayor time himself on discussion on legislative issues? Not the actual running of a meeting, but when discussing legislative issues?
No.
Okay. I would move then that the mayor be granted the same time limit of 5 minutes when addressing the legislative issue as is granted to council members, but that the time limit should not apply to the mayor's role as the presiding officer.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Kelly, that we hold the mayor to the same debate time limit, exempting his or her role as chair of the meeting. Is there any discussion on this item? I will add my 2 cents. I'm not sure if this has ever been an issue, and that would require somebody to make a call when the mayor is acting as chair and when the mayor is acting as as a legislator, and I'm not sure there's a mechanism in place to adjudicate that. So I don't think there's a problem here that needs to be fixed. Is there any further? Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I think that's my same feeling. I was trying to figure out who's going to be on the clock to time the mayor when he's speaking. Is that responsibility the city clerks, or I don't know? And then more importantly, I don't think there's a need. I think the reason why there's a time limit with us, similar to kind of the intent of the motion I made earlier about public comment, is that there's 9 of us, there's only one mayor. So I think the mayor, any mayor will be able to keep their comments in check, especially when they have this opportunity to speak. Not an opportunity, when it's really encouraged, I think through Robert's rules, that they speak last. They have the benefit of kind of hearing all of the discussion and then kind of doing one, usually brief comment on everything that they've heard, and then we move on. So I agree. I don't think this is necessary.
All right, so there is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will call the roll. And just to clarify, what we're voting on is holding the mayor to the same time limit.
Councilmember Isles?
No.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a vote of 5-4, that motion fails. And we will move on to Roman numeral 6G4. This is public participation during council debate. Is there anybody wishing to make a motion, or the staff want to give us some context on 6G4? Councilmember Burns, is that your hand for this one?
Nope.
Okay, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, if we need clarification, does that go into that 5 minutes, or is that
So
what
you're
that's
referring to the
considered?
previous
The public
public participation?
Yeah. Yes. No.
So you're asking if you, as a council member, want clarification from a member of the public, maybe they're a representative of an applicant, maybe they're the applicant themselves.
Correct.
Does that count against your time limit?
Correct. Is that what we're saying here?
That is not what we're saying.
Okay.
And my understanding is that you would have 5 minutes to ask your question, and then that question could be answered by the person you're asking. Is that consistent with staff and the mayor's interpretation of current rules?
That is consistent with my enforcement custom for current rules. Whether it's the same as my interpretation is another question. And not to go backwards, but I'm not going to change my practice if the rules don't change, but I would welcome direction from council on how to handle this, because I acknowledge the way we do it is kind of weird. And if you don't like it, I'm happy to do something else.
Councilmember Burns, I'm sorry, Councilmember Rogers, and then Councilmember Burns.
I mean, I wouldn't support this just based on the language of allowing, when the way it's written is allowing council member to cede debate time to members of the public would be me saying, I'm not going to speak on this matter, Mr. Mayor. I would like Alex from the roundtable to speak on my behalf and grant him my 5 minutes.
Absolutely not.
That's what I'm reading this to mean here, the way it's worded.
That is the way I read it as well. Councilmember Burns?
I was just, I guess, commenting on I don't know if everybody's version it says presiding, appropriate by the presiding officer. So I don't know if we ever use that language in our rules. I don't know if I'm assuming that's the chair, but we should just be consistent on how we describe the chair, if that's what we mean by presiding officer.
The presiding officer would be the mayor if the mayor is here in person, the mayor pro tem if the mayor is not here in person.
And that is clarified in the definitions section as well.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay.
So I don't see a motion on 6G4, public participation, so I'm going to move on to 6I5, supermajority votes. Let me catch up in my packet on this one, 6I5, supermajority votes, and going first to staff.
Just a couple of quick notes on these. First of all, in the first bullet point, I understand this to be a request that we reinstate what is currently Rule 18.12 in the City Council rules, which says that at the request of 2 council members, any matter except a special order of business may be held over for consideration until the next regular meeting of the council. On bullet point 2, the rules do change our current unanimous vote requirement for suspending the rules to allow introduction and action of an ordinance at the same meeting. The current draft requires a 2/3 supermajority rather than a unanimous vote. When we reviewed rules for other comparable communities, we were a real outlier on this question. Most other communities require either a 2/3 vote or even a simple majority. I only found one other community that required a unanimous vote, so that's the reason for that change, just that we were out of line with the practices of other communities.
And the draft has incorporated that change, which brings us in line. Okay. So are there any motions from members of this committee on 6I5 supermajority votes? I don't see any. I'm going to give everybody till the Jeopardy song in my head stops playing. And I think it has. So let's move on now to a new Roman numeral. This is Roman numeral 7, committees. B2A. So this is appointments to boards, committees, and commissions, and lowercase a, appointment of members. Does anybody have a motion on this, or do we want to, does staff have anything to say first?
So the only note on this one is that on page 5, if you're looking at the feedback independently, under, let's see, section 2, B, duties of mayor duties, D, duties of council members, and then 4, council attendance. We had this paragraph here that was almost like very clearly.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Let's make sure we are in the same place. I am here, committees, B2A.
No, sorry, D, sorry, D.
We are here.
But this is something that happened,
Okay.
and we said, this is clearly for BCCs, and
Okay.
it was put in the wrong place.
Got it. Okay.
And so it's relevant to the section that we're coming up to now.
Got it. Okay, so on the next page, under subcommittees in section D, it's just something that was under council.
So it should,
I don't have that in mine.
do you remember this part? It said council attendance, but then the language said require attendance for all boards, committees, and commissions to ensure participation and accountability among members. And this was about members being absent. And so I made a
Okay.
note to go back to page 5 so that we don't lose it in this
I am
section.
going to call a brief timeout and make sure we are all literally on the same page, because what you're looking at is not what I'm looking
Okay,
at.
okay.
And I want to make sure that I'm the outlier here and no one else is. Did we already talk about that?
Yes, so this is from last time.
That's from last time. Okay,
This is
got
from
it.
last time, and
I'm
we
sorry.
said- and
We
said-
already talked about this. We talked about this last time.
But
Got it.
we said this is not in the right place. We didn't vote on it. We withdrew the
Got it,
motion
got it.
because it wasn't relevant.
I'm
at the
sorry.
time.
Slow on the uptake here. You did say page 5. So,
Right.
all right, so I will call everybody's attention to page 5. Duties of,
That's why it's confusing, because it was put in the wrong spot.
yeah, duties of council members, council attendance, which shows up as, D4 on page 5, but it really should be part of 7B.
And it might, maybe it's D instead of A, but it's, I just wanted to not
Okay.
lose it.
So it's this,
Well, wherever you want to put it, it's not really anywhere. It's not really.
well, the feedback was this, right?
Yes, and so.
So from page 5, the feedback was to require attendance for all boards, committees, and commissions to ensure participation and accountability among members, right? If a member is absent for 3 consecutive meetings or attends less than 55% of the meetings in a year without an excuse, then the member is effectively resigned from the committee, and the spot is opened for another council member or resident appointment. That was the idea, which should have been, which we are now considering in this section, should somebody care to make that motion. Thank you for clarifying. Is everybody following where we're at? Good. Okay, Councilmember Rogers.
So I don't know that I'm 100% following, so I want to make sure. So my understanding was D4 on page 5 was attendance of council members at these events, these meetings.
No, we decided, I just rewatched it because I had to do the minutes.
Okay.
And the conversation was, this is clearly for all of the the way that this was written, it's for all BCC members. And we talked about not just council members, but also members of the public who serve on BCCs.
Okay.
And when we decided that was the case, that it was more appropriate to put it in the BCC section instead of this council attendance section.
So are we saying there should not be any attendance requirements for council members on council committees?
I don't believe that was made a specific recommendation in the comments, in the feedback that folks submitted.
So I would just respond to this by saying that there already are rules in the city ordinance. Corporation Counsel can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe that at 4 meetings, you are considered to have vacated your position, or 4 months. It's 4 months, which is 4 meetings, because when we did land use, we had to change it in order to make it shorter, since we were a twice-a-month meeting and not a monthly meeting. So I believe that any council rule here would be in contradiction to the ordinance. It's all about BCC members. That's all that it addresses.
This sounds like an item for Corporation Counsel to weigh in on as soon as you can.
And if it's not in there that way, I would not support, I think each board committee should come up with their own rules, as long as they're in keeping with whatever the intent of and the statement of the actual ordinance is. I don't think city council should impose rules on boards, committees, and commissions. I think we should impose them on ourselves.
I'm not seeing a specific rule on attendance for boards, commissions, and committees on a cursory glance, and I wasn't aware of one previously, but I can continue to look into it and have it prepared for the next rules meeting.
Not in the ordinance, not in the rules.
Right, in the ordinances. Yeah.
Okay, I'll help you look for it.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can move along.
So that one is, that one will be addressed in the background. Let's move on. And so we are now talking about committees, Roman numeral 7, B2A, the appointment of members. Is there any motion on B2A? Seeing none, I am going to move on to B2D, which is reappointments and vacancies. Is there any motion or is there any staff commentary that needs to precede discussion of reappointments and vacancies? All right. Some lights went on while I was looking down, and now 3 lights are on. So I'm going to go first to staff, then to Councilmember Isles, then Kelly, and then Rogers.
I apologize. One quick note. You'll see the final bullet point under reappointments and vacancies says that this section should be revised to reflect the current library board process, which does not have term limits. Maybe Corporation Counsel can weigh on this, but my understanding is that this is a state law requirement regarding the library board specifically. And so it's treated differently than other BCCs.
That's correct.
Okay. Isles, Kelly, Rogers.
That was essentially my comment, is that the library board doesn't behave in this manner. I served 3 terms, so I was reappointed twice. It wasn't a state library board requirement, though. We voted at one point to do that on our own. And I guess we were allowed to do that. But I distinctly remember my first term having a vote about it. And then that's how it happened.
And so current rules are,
There's no term
do we need
limits.
to change council rules to comply with state law?
I apologize. I think I may have misspoke. I think state law permits it, and the library
Okay.
board took advantage of that state law exception. But it is treated differently under state law than the other
Okay.
BCCs, and the draft should be revised to recognize that distinction.
All right, so
That
a
was my
motion
suggestion.
would therefore be in order.
Okay, I make a motion to acknowledge that the library board doesn't have term limits.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Isles, second by Councilmember Hikaris, that we revise the rules to clarify that the library board has different rules in this regard. Is there any discussion on this motion?
You know, just to be clear, they're still subject to the mayor reappointing them. So there's no term limit, but the mayor can choose not to reappoint a library board member.
Councilmember Rogers has a question.
Yes, question on this one. Should we be making rules in our rules that apply to other boards and commissions outside of our purview? And that's just a general question. Should we be, if things have been, my understanding is it's been codified, is that correct? Or is this just a policy that they've come up with? And if so, should city council rules say that, or should we codify that into an actual document to make it part of the ordinance?
Some of the various BCCs have their own rules, others do not. I think the goal in this draft is to provide sort of a standardized starting point, and the BCCs could supplement that in addition to the council rules if they so chose, but to try to standardize our process across different BCCs as much as possible so that members of the BCCs, members of the public know what to expect, know how BCCs are going to operate, and that there's some consistency across BCCs.
All right, I guess I would prefer that each board, committee, or commission come up with their own rules and not be guided by a city council rule that we are creating.
Having served on two different BCCs, I think Utilities Commission and the Environment Board are my points of reference. I think it would be useful for those two boards to have some general rules to refer to so they don't have to navel gaze on procedural issues. It might be different for committees that are doing more than just advisory work. Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that not all BCCs are created equal. So Councilmember Kelly and then Councilmember, back to Rogers.
I agree with Councilmember Rogers. I think we should empower them with more independence and,
there is a motion on the table.
The motion is, remind me.
The motion is Councilmember Isles' motion, seconded by Councilmember Hikaris.
We're just discussing that right now?
We discussed it to make it clear that the library board can do what they want.
I support that.
Okay. Let me call the roll on that motion then.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
No.
Councilmember Hikaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
By a vote of 8-1, that motion passes. Is there any additional discussion or motions on the Section A appointment of members? Okay, Councilmember Kelly and then Rogers.
I'm sorry, we're just on A. I'm looking at
Yeah, we're
D,
just
so-
on, we're just on A. All right. All right, well, let's move on to Section D then, which is reappointments and vacancies. Were we already on D? I'm sorry, I misspoke.
I was busy
We were
looking.
already on D.
I'm
So
sorry.
we're still on D. Are there any additional motions on D? Mr. Mayor.
Forgive me, I have a question. When it says here, when the vacancy is created by the resignation, the member appointed shall be appointed to a full term. That means that if the standard terms of the BCC in question are like, let's say 3 years, and somebody resigns after a year and a half, when that new person gets seated, they get a reset 3-year clock?
That has been, I believe, policy that we've been following.
I think it varies from committee to committee.
Okay, well,
I think
we're not consistent in something?
surprising, I know.
I know, shock. I mean, if you're asking for input, I think it should. I think you should be appointed to a full term.
Yeah, I mean, that results in fewer appointments, so sign me up.
I think some committees are.
Councilmember Isles and then Kelly.
I think some committees are staggered. I think some committees are staggered in a certain way. And so I think in library board, you served an hour, like a year and a half, and then you got your own term after that. They were staggered intentionally. I wouldn't really want to mess with that if a committee was set up like that historically.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly, and then back to Rogers.
So the first bullet point, members should retain their positions until a vacancy is filled.
We're not there yet.
We're not on D. I thought
Well,
it was-
we're discussing any motion, there are no motions on the table for Section D reappointments and vacancies. So any motion relevant to Section D would be in order.
Okay, well, I'd like to make that motion, but it sounds like we're still wrapping up on another. Someone wants to make a different motion?
I think your motion would be in order.
Okay, well, then I'd like to move that members retain their positions until a vacancy is filled.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Rogers, that BCC members should retain their positions until a vacancy is filled. So this means
With the
if their
caveat,
term
if they
ends and there's
want to.
not a replacement in waiting, they stay on the board,
If they're willing, yes.
assuming they're willing. Is there any discussion on this one? Mr. Mayor.
I mean, I'll confess I don't love this idea anyways, but I'd unlove it less depending on the answer to this. Obviously, for committees that are providing us with advice, there's sort of no rules. It is what we want it to be. But for committees that are determinative bodies, and particularly for committees that are created by statute, is there a issue here where, like, I mean, to give an extreme example, where like a vote on a pension board that's a creature of the state would be contestable because the appointment in question had lapsed?
I think that's a question that Corporation Counsel Ruggie and I would have to look into in more depth, but that certainly seems to me like a real concern.
Councilmember Rogers, your light is on. Was it for this motion?
I think so. I would just say that I also think we need to look at determinative bodies where, for example, Land Use Commission, because I'm most familiar with that, we require 5 votes for a determination. And if we were stuck in a 4-4 situation, a matter would not be resolved one way or the other until such time that a new appointment could be made. So I understand what the mayor is raising, but I also think there's another concern. When I first joined zoning board, which had the same rule at the time, for the first 3 months, we had an open vote because one member failed to attend meetings, and we finally got them to come to one meeting, cast their vote, and resign, so that we could resolve that matter. So I think that, it's important on a deliberative body that there be that 5th vote if that is required by state statute. So I'm not saying we have to push it right now, but I'd be very interested in finding out what Corporation Counsel is able to find out on that.
So there is a motion on the table that's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any additional conversation on this? Do we want to withdraw the motion pending some additional research by staff? Or do we want to take a vote right now?
I would just say to modify it so that pending any legal considerations for any particular boards, such as pension boards, that those could be exempted or, follow whatever the state guidance is on those particular boards.
I'm going to turn to staff. Does that sound like a concept that can be reasonably written into rules?
My suspicion is that this may end up being a pretty thorny question that really varies a lot depending on the BCC in question. And so my recommendation would be that we complete the legal research first.
Okay, so staff's recommendation would be for the motion to be withdrawn for now, pending some additional research. Councilmember Davis.
Could I request that when staff does do research, can we just enumerate the list of BCCs where it is permissible? Because I would assume it's the majority, right? Or we could just list the ones that we think it may not, like possibly could not be permissible. So whichever ones are not kind of a slam dunk, if you know what I mean.
Yes, we can certainly return with that research at the next meeting.
Councilmember Rogers.
Oh, no, I don't have my light on.
No, you don't.
I don't know what the rules are with lights tonight.
All right, so there is a motion on the table with a second, Councilmember Kelly, and then I want to dispose with this motion one way or the other.
So I'll withdraw it with the understanding that you'll come back with the itemizing those boards, committees, and commissions, which I think are very few, that would have to be precluded from this for our next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly has withdrawn that motion. There are no motions on the table. Does anybody wish to make an additional motion on Section D, reappointments and vacancies? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on, and we are now in Roman numeral 7,
I'm sorry.
committees.
So I just missed E, the last one about chair. Each board, committee, and committee shall elect its own chair from among its members.
I'm sorry, which bullet are you on?
See that one, the last one of D, I think it is.
The last one of D. B2,
Is that right?
are you on, did you say E as in Edward or D as in dog?
I said E.
In Evanston?
Am I on the wrong?
I don't see an E as in Evanston.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong, okay,
All right.
about the chairs.
Okay,
that's-
so we are going to move on.
Okay.
With C as in Charlie, this is standing committees under section Roman numeral 7. And then subsection 1, which is Rules Committee. Does anybody have a motion to make on C1, which is Rules Committee? Seeing no motions, I'm going to move on to C4, which is Planning and Development. Does staff want to address planning and development? I believe there was some.
Yes, just one quick note here on the second bullet point, which suggests revising something along the lines of current council rule 6.4, which sets forth some requirements for petitioners giving presentations to planning and development. We're working with our community development staff to prepare a slightly revised version of that rule that will appear in the next draft.
And have we already given you that feedback to make that happen? Was that part of our consent?
If you wanted to make a motion, I think that would be fine. Planning and our community development staff says that there's some value to the current rule. They would like to propose some tweaks to it. I think particularly allowing the committee itself to request a presentation when that would be valuable information for the committee.
Okay. So the request is for a motion to make the draft new rules more or less resemble our current rules with regards to applicant presentations. Is there somebody willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? The motion made by Councilmember Harakatis is to amend the draft rules to essentially say the same thing as our current rules with regards to applicant presentations at P&D.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Harakatis, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Isles,
Yes.
Mayor Biss,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
No.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
No.
and Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
By a vote of 7-2, that motion passes. Is there any other motion relative to Section C4, Planning and Development? Seeing none, I will move on to C5, which is the Referrals Committee. Does anybody wish to make a motion with regards to the Referrals Committee? The Jeopardy song is playing, and Councilmember Rogers, we go to you.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that the Land Use Commission be provided the opportunity to make regular omnibus changes through a referral process to Planning and Development.
So this is the second bullet in the
Second bullet
compiled
point
feedback. Is there a second for Councilmember Rogers' motion?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Davis.
What does that mean?
So it had been standing practice for a number of years for the Land Use Commission to make omnibus referrals. So what would happen is as issues came up over the course of the year, where we recognized that we were constantly approving things or constantly denying things, or in the process of seeing certain issues that became problematic as they moved through the process, the Land Use Commission would regularly make an omnibus recommendation to Planning and Development without having to go through the full referrals process. We saw this kind of get snagged a little bit during the initial days of the Referrals Committee in particular, where Land Use Commission would follow its operating practice of doing this. Things would then be kicked back to Land Use from the Referrals Committee after all the work had been done. And so it was just repetitive work. I believe at one point the ordinance did give Land Use Commission some certain privileges along these lines that weren't afforded to a number of other committees. I don't know if that still stands in the current land use structure or not. But this was a means of not having to come with individual little referrals each and every time, but creating an omnibus over the course of every 6 months to a year.
So
And when we say-
Councilmember Rogers was referring to, was answering Councilmember Davis's question. Councilmember Davis still has the floor.
Yeah, okay. And so when we say bodies like the Land Use Commission, what other bodies are there like the Land Use Commission?
None that I know of in particular.
Okay, well then I'd like to clarify that we mean the Land Use Commission then. And that's, I can make a formal amendment if that's preferred.
Let's see what Mayor Biss has to say and anybody else, and then we can entertain a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I think that Councilmember Rogers really illustrated the point by saying this was a snag that happened early in the referrals committee's existence. I think everyone has kind of adjusted to it, and I actually don't, on a substantive level, see what's different about the Land Use Commission as compared to other committees on this specific type of topic. And so, I don't know why we would vote for this and not also allow the Environment Board to initiate a rewrite of CARP without it going through the referrals process or whatever else. And I think the point of having a referrals process is to allow a centralized traffic control mechanism so that there's both transparency about what's going on and kind of deliberate allocation of staff time. And I think this would be a step in the wrong direction on that front.
Councilmember Kelly.
I wonder, Councilmember Rogers, if you'd be amenable to amending this so that allowing BCCs to provide changes through the referral process. So currently, as it states, this isn't something that's provided for. So this would just simply say to
Under
mayor,
current-
business.
Under current rules, if the Land Use Commission had an omnibus package they wanted to present, they would have to get 3 council members to
Right, so I'm
sponsor it and go through the
saying-
referral process. That's what's currently allowed
Right,
under
so I'm-
current rules and would be allowed under the draft rules as well.
Right, so I'm just making this a little bit different, so you wouldn't have to get your 3 council members, but that a body could propose an ordinance or whatever it is through the referrals committee. As opposed to
And I
through,
guess where I'm kind of drawing on this from is 219.1, which is the purpose of the Land Use Commission. D, adoption from time to time by the city council when change conditions warrant or it is otherwise desired changes or amendments in the previously adopted official plan, regulation, ordinances, and programs. And it's a little vague, I suppose, but we had sort of operated, Land Use Commission, I'm sorry, had sort of operated that way. And it seems like that we should, they're a determining body. They're one of the few determining bodies that we have. And so they are different. Their decisions are not appealable to city council. So if we can come up with a means not to stymie the omnibus moving forward, I'm for that. I also would like to see, I know we've been going back and forth with the forms. I think I was the only one who tried the new form for referrals. Land Use Commission was on there. They are not on the current one. So that might be something that would help it because I'm more than willing to make referrals anytime a Land Use Commissioner asks me to.
Is there any additional discussion on this? See nobody wishing to make a comment for the first time. I will weigh in, and I think I'm going to agree with the mayor that our referrals process does offer kind of much needed traffic control. And if I would still want the Land Use Commission to be able to propose an omnibus and would be totally willing to co-sponsor, to be a co-sponsor if Councilmember Rogers, you wanted to be the lead sponsor on something like that, just to keep the process consistent. And the same would then apply to any other board, commission, or committee. So I am advocating for a no vote on this motion.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. All right. So if there is no further discussion on this amendment, Councilmember Davis, you had a friendly amendment to suggest that this would be limited to just the Land Use Commission, not committees like the Land Use Commission.
I withdraw my amendment. I think that if Councilmember Rogers is up for it, then I'll second it and support it, but it was a friendly amendment, so.
Okay, so there is no friendly amendment. The amendment, the motion which has been made by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Burns, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, it came in late. Thank you. I think if it was limited to the Land Use Commission, which I don't think it would be if there weren't an amendment, and if it was, and maybe even I'd be open to it to all committees, but if it was a once a year thing, like limited to the land use, and then, once on an annual basis, the land use shall do this still through the referrals process, but something that wouldn't require, 2 co-refers, I could get behind that. But other than that, as Mayor Biss said, the last council spent a lot of time thinking about the referrals committee, and I think that's what you're probably feeling more than anything is just us trying to continue to, commit to and support the referrals process, which we haven't had for that long. There's certainly some improvements we can make, but I think it's trying to support that to see how well it does with traffic control and, making sure that we have a process that a better process that also directs staff time as well. So, but yeah, I probably could get around if it was, only maybe on an annual basis.
Councilmember Rogers and then Davis, and it's after 8 o'clock and we're almost at the end, so.
I will not pursue it now, but I will have another motion or clarification, I guess. Actually, it's a clarification, it's not a motion. So I guess my clarification would be, what is a public policy change versus an administrative change? And if everything has to go through the referrals committee, then we should remove such language as public policy change and just say everything goes through referrals. Because when the mayor and I met initially after his election and I was appointed our elected chair of Land Use Commission, we had a discussion about what is the purpose of referrals, if it's public policy change versus administrative, how are those two things defined? But if the rule is, and council wishes it to be, that everything goes through referrals committee, then everything needs to go through referrals committee, and I'm fine with that. But I think we need to strike any language about a difference between a public policy change versus anything else. So I'll let this vote move forward and then come back with another motion.
All right, Councilmember Davis.
I think that, having been on a commission as well, that there should be an easier lower bar for commissions they shouldn't need to, like if they have a vote and they all decide they want some type of legislation or policy put through, they shouldn't then have to find 3 city council members as well. I think that there is a middle ground where they can just find one, and maybe we don't want them directly referring by themselves for some reason. But I do think it's strange that there isn't more of an easy process for such a large group of people to make a request or some type of referral. And so depending on how this vote goes, I also intend to make a motion that if there is a majority vote from a BCC and they have city council support, they should be able to make a city council members support, they should be able to make a referral.
Councilmember Burns, is your hand still up or up again?
It wasn't, but now it is. Thank you for calling on me. Yeah, I think something around that I might be to get around too. I think this just needs a little bit more thought. We're trying to figure it out on the fly. It might be one of those things where, we should take some time to give some thoughts to staff and then come back at the next meeting with more clear direction. But there's something in this that I would certainly support.
Before we vote, let me just weigh in. As a former member of the Environment Board, this has come up when the Environment Board is clearly behind something, and I, as a council member of that board, wanted to advance it to the council. I found co-sponsors to make that happen. It wasn't an issue. So I don't think procedurally we're losing anything by just sticking with the same procedure for everybody, treating everybody equally. So Councilmember Davis, and then I want to take a vote on this one because
there are multiple BCCs with no council members on them, though. There are multiple BCCs with no council members on them, though. And so I think...
Put in the Environment Board now, but I would still treat that the same way.
Okay. Just pointing out that it's not as easy as there being a council member on that board who is able to advocate for the board to push something through, or commission or committee.
Okay. Thank you for that. No further discussion on the motion, which is to allow bodies like the Land Use Commission to provide regular omnibus changes through its own referral process. That is the motion. I will ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Isles?
No.
Mayor Biss?
No.
Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
By a vote of 5-4, that motion fails. Is there another motion relative to the Referrals Committee? Councilmember Rogers.
I would move that all references to public policy change be stricken and that it treat all matters coming before us through the referrals committee, that all matters come before the referrals committee before coming on to council.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. I'm going to go to Mayor Biss and then Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I don't understand what we're doing here. I mean, I think we've all acknowledged for years that this is a complex gray area. I think this committee unanimously asked staff to come back with definitions to clarify this distinction. I don't know why we would short circuit that process by striking the whole concept that staff is seeking to define right now.
And I would just add that the current definitions, which will be strengthened hopefully in the next draft that you see, distinguish between legislative, public policy matters and administrative matters. And so I think one thing that we would not want to do is require that, for instance, contracts go through the referrals process and other kind of administrative matters that the city manager routinely puts on the agenda.
Councilmember Davis.
My question was whether or not contracts would be wrapped up in that. So I don't have a question anymore.
Councilmember Rogers.
I withdraw my motion and ask that those definitions do be strengthened so that there is clarity, and that if something is not a public policy change, that it not go through the referrals committee then.
Okay. Councilmember Burns. The motion has been withdrawn.
Yeah, I just want to say, I know it's been withdrawn, but I still want to get this on the record. I was, even though I ultimately supported the referrals committee, I had my concerns about it as it was initially drafted. And again, not only was there a lot of thought, but there were amendments made to get council members comfortable with what we have now. And so I appreciate you withdrawing the motion, because I want to be very careful about what we require, to be sent through the committee. Because again, the referrals committee, there was a lot of time and a lot of kind of discussion around that. So I appreciate you withdrawing it and look forward to having a discussion at a future meeting about definitions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, if there are no additional motions relative to the referrals committee, we are going to move on to committee of the whole. Are there any motions that anybody wishes to make regarding committee of the whole? I saw a light blink on and off. I'm going to interpret that as off. And seeing no motions regarding committee of the whole, we are going to move on to section D. So we just, as a reminder, we are in Roman numeral 7, section D, subcommittees. Are there any motions relevant to this section D, subcommittees? And we're in the home stretch here. So
just very quickly, I wanted to note that the reason this is drafted to require that subcommittees be composed of a minimum of 3 members is so that you don't run the risk of there being a perpetual tie.
Okay. Councilmember Burns, and then Councilmember Davis.
No, I got nothing. Sorry.
Okay.
That was still up from before.
Councilmember Davis.
I would like to make a motion that subcommittees do not have to be composed of basically delete the entire provision. They don't have to be composed of at least 3 members or members of the board, committee, or commission, which they report. And then, so that's my motion.
Is this the second bullet point here?
Yeah, the second bullet point.
Okay, so you're moving the second bullet point, which says delete entirely the provision that subcommittees must be composed of at least 3 members who are also members of the BCC to which they report.
Yep.
Which means what in your reading? I think I know what it means, but
I think 2 things. The first is that we don't need 3. It can be 2 members because it doesn't seem like we are worried about ties as a city council, and based on our earlier decisions. But then the second is that I think that seems like a good way to bring in temporary subcommittees to help decide on like small matters.
So what you're suggesting is that a BCC could create its own subcommittee involving other members of the public that have not been appointed by the mayor or approved by city council.
Yes.
Okay.
And I seconded that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Is there any additional discussion on this one? Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think sometimes subcommittees are formed with very focused expertise, and there are people in the community who could really bring a lot of value, and as opposed to having to go through some, lengthy bureaucratic process to have them appointed. I think this makes a lot of sense and could be very helpful to our city.
Councilmember Harris and then Councilmember Burns.
So who makes the decision who's on these subcommittees? Can I just bring in my friends and the people who are on my side of something? How do we make that decision?
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I would say that was my only concern is the manner of selection. Other than that, I think it's an idea worth exploring.
Is anybody else who wishes to weigh in for the first time before I weigh in? Councilmember Rogers, you have not weighed in on the first time for the first time on this one.
Right. I could support this. I think that there are ways around, if, for example, if it's a subcommittee of a committee, that the committee vote on the members who are brought on to avoid having personal friends brought on, things like that. I think it's possible. These are not bodies that would be making the final recommendation. They would be expert bodies that would be brought in. So I can support this.
Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. In my experience on the Environment Board, the workaround was to call it a task force. And folks that had some interest and expertise in a particular area would be allowed to, work together, present their findings to the Environment Board, and the Environment Board would take a vote on whether or not to pass those recommendations along. So I don't necessarily, I understand what Councilmember Davis is suggesting, because sometimes the case, might occur when some additional input from members who are not on the council would be valid. I think there's a way to legally make that happen now without changing the rules. So that's my 2 cents. I'm going to go back to Kelly, Davis, and then call a vote on this one.
I was just going to say what Chair Rogers said, that this would be voted on, the members would be voted on by the committee. And I do think a subcommittee is better than a task force. Task force are frequently end up being very non-transparent, not by intentionality, but I think a subcommittee has more of a clear, defined purpose and transparent process involved.
Back to Councilmember Davis, and Councilmember Burns, is your hand up on this one still?
Yeah, my hand's up again.
Okay,
Thanks.
Davis and then Burns, and then hopefully we're done.
I think the term workaround suggests that we are doing things in a illegitimate manner, and there is no actual legitimate path, and that if we recognize that there's a need for a workaround, that means that there's a need for a codified policy instead of something that is inconsistent. What I'll also say is that to Councilmember Harris's question earlier, this idea was actually inspired by the Equity Empowerment Commission that you were on, you were on previously, I'm not sure if you're currently on, where they were having difficulties coming up with they needed subcommittees or groups of people to basically address issues, but they also felt as if there was not enough expertise, particularly because the Equity Empowerment Commission is meant to draw in a lot of diversity, but diversity comes in so many different ways that you cannot always have the types of representation that you need for every single issue. And so it would be beneficial for those people to be able to bring in a subcommittee that has specialty in that particular area. I'll also say that on the Finance and Budget Board, or Finance and Budget, we sometimes run into issues where I think it'd be very helpful to have a subcommittee of people in our community who are very learned in one particular aspect, and to get their feedback in a formal way And I think that applies for basically all of the BCCs, but if I were to give particular examples. But I think the fact that Councilmember Nusma has already pointed out that the Environment Board did create task force really emphasizes how useful this is as a tool. I'm done.
Councilmember Burns and then Harris, and then Herodakakis.
Yeah, I guess what I also need to understand is like my understanding, I'm thinking of the Planning and Development Subcommittee that I was on. That was a committee where there was, I think the meeting was publicly noticed, that it had staff support. I don't know if it was necessarily treated as like a regular meeting, but there was still some staff support and the meeting was publicly held. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about something different? Because if it doesn't have staff support, then it really could just be a task force. I'm assuming we're saying that staff will still support these subcommittees. And if that is what we're talking about, then also we want to make sure that we're not, like there's a limit on how many can be made, especially at one time if it does require staff support. So I think my bottom line is I'm comfortable supporting this. If we want to pass something today, I would want to make sure that we come back, that included in the motion, we say that we're going to come back at the next meeting with ideas for manner of selection and also to limit how many can be created if there's staff support. If there's not staff support, then I probably wouldn't support it anyway.
Councilmember Herodakakis.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Burns hit on something I was thinking about. I'm completely in support of allowing this subcommittee to have just 2 council members on it. My one question, and I don't see it in our rules document, is whether or not these subcommittees would need staff support, all following all the OMA rules, having things posted. I think, I didn't even have to go back and look. I think in HCDC, I think we had 1 subcommittee, and I know there was, and actually now that I think about it, it was probably a task force because it was not, there's only one or 2 members. But that's my one question. So maybe, I don't know if Corporation Counsel Ruggie can clarify the rules around subcommittee meetings and recording and posting and all. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, subcommittees would need staff support on posting and following all of the OMA requirements.
Okay. And as long as that's followed, I'm good with this addition.
And just as a point of information, 2 examples I was referring to under the Environment Board were the CARP Implementation Task Force and the Building Electrification Working Group. Both of those groups had participants who were not appointed members of the Environment Board. But both of those meetings were OMA compliant and required staff support. So maybe workaround wasn't the best choice of words because both of those examples were fully OMA compliant and fully transparent. So Councilmember Harris and then back to Burns.
So yes, I wasn't on the Equity Commission when they had that issue. But again, my concern is how's that vetted? How do we determine what the specialty is and that they're an expert in that? Who makes that decision? What qualifications do they need to present or have to make that a fair and equitable? Yep, you have if there's people that have the qualifications, how do you figure that out? So I understand the need for having more people sit in and help make decisions, but then is that we need more people on the BCC or what? I'm just very nervous about a committee randomly picking people. Where's the equity in there and the transparency and how they were picked? I think it just gets to be this big thing that gets us in trouble if not done accurately. And if we're not on the committee, as you said, council isn't on every single committee, then how do we have oversight to make sure that's done right?
Yeah.
So those are just my questions.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, and I think when somebody from the committee is actually on the committee, again, there's some natural things that are there that discourages, it discourages the committee from creating too many subcommittees, because then that means they have to be present. But if you can select, if you can create 3 different subcommittees with all different members, but staff has to be available for all 3 of those, I think that can create some challenges that I just would want us to think about before I was comfortable with this. So again, I think for me to get behind it, I would want to make sure we come back at the next meeting and talking about manner of selection and a limit on how many of these can be created, especially the subcommittees that don't have committee members on them.
City Manager Stowe.
Thank you, Chair Nusma. And I just wanted to echo some of the comments that Councilmember Burns has shared in the last few minutes. I personally feel, and I think other senior staff would agree, that we can barely support the BCCs that we have today. And I'm just concerned about additional sprawl, BCC sprawl, and the staff support required to properly help that effort. And so I would just express pretty strong concerns about additional BCC growth at this time. I know many years ago we studied how many BCCs that we had versus other communities of our size, and we were at the top of that list as far as BCCs per capita or per population. So I would just express concern for additional growth on this front and staff support required to implement that.
And that feedback would apply whether or not this motion carries. Right?
Yeah, I think it's an existing problem already. We're already at capacity, I would argue. And a lot of the senior staff that support BCC work, it's the same folks over and over and over. And those folks already have regular work, special projects, BCCs, late meetings, et cetera.
Yeah, so that feedback is well received.
I'd like to speak one more time when I can. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get right back to you. I just want to clarify that the city manager's feedback will apply regardless of the outcome of the vote on this motion. And, in the course of discussion and reflecting on, how this has been handled at the Environment Board, they call them task force or working group, really they're subcommittees. And so I think striking this Rule 3, as Councilmember Davis has suggested, does kind of help codify existing practice. So I think I might be switching sides on this one, but Councilmember Burns.
I just also want to say, I think also what I was thinking about is, if there could be staff support, but, they didn't necessarily have to produce minutes because it didn't trigger OMA because there were fewer members on these subcommittees, then that I think was something that's what I thought we were talking about initially, something where there's staff support, but it doesn't come with all of the additional workload that comes with more official OMA meetings. Again, that's something that can be done, but I thought this was a way around that. So I don't know. I think we just need to think carefully about that, because that has been my understanding from talking to Manager Stowe, is that there is, and honestly, I feel like I've encountered that as well, that I think we're still trying to figure out how to make sure the committees have the support that they need. And there has been a great effort to try to reduce the amount of BCCs. And in some ways, this can be looked at, especially if, it's required that minutes are provided and all of that this could be a workaround to creating new BCCs when the city has put in a lot of effort over the past several years to reduce the amount of BCCs by consolidating and what have you. So I do think we need to think maybe a little more carefully about this and come back at the next meeting, having thought more about it.
Councilmember Rogers and Kelly, and then I'm going to call the vote on this one.
Just a real quick question. So this does not do anything to abolish subcommittees that already are parts of BCCs?
I guess that would be a question for staff. Are any existing subcommittees grandfathered in?
The draft is currently silent on that point, but it certainly could be changed. I think the intent is that new subcommittees going forward would be governed by these rules.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, if that's the answer, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Kelly?
So going back to what you said earlier, Councilmember Newsma, so this wouldn't preclude a task force, right? I mean, right now, any committee can form a task force. So I just want to make that clear for like new council members that task force can be created.
Right. If the rule stays in, the subcommittee could be created and called a task force, which is really just the same idea with a different word. So there being no further discussion on this motion, the motion is to strike in its entirety paragraph or part 3D3, subcommittees, membership, to strike in its entirety that membership paragraph. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Isles.
No.
Mayor Biss.
No.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
No.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
By a vote of 5-4, that motion passes. Are there any additional motions relevant to the subcommittees section? Seeing none, we're going to move on to E, which is procedures for BCCs. Is there anybody wishing to make a motion relative to that section of the draft rules? Anyone? Councilmember Rogers.
I'm not going to make a motion, but I would just strongly encourage that each and every board, committee, and commission consider drafting their own rules for operation so that it's very clear what their purpose is and how they go about accomplishing that.
Councilmember.
We're definitely modeling, making that seem like a really fun project.
Councilmember Kelly.
So can this be modified to, does it need to be modified to simply say that that is an option or no?
I guess that's a question for
I'm
staff.
just going between the various packets here.
I believe, I would have to go back and double check, but I believe most, if not all, of the ordinances creating different BCCs give them the authority to establish their own rules. Again, the goal of this draft is to set forward some kind of basic standards for all BCCs that they could supplement based on their specific mission and purview, but to standardize this across city government as much as possible so that members of BCCs, members of council, members of the public, staff are applying basically the same set of rules across the board.
Thank you. I guess I would say I don't know. It's hard right now, but I'm sure various boards, committees, and commissions are very different by nature, and perhaps having that option available would be beneficial. So if that could be, that's what I would, so you say right now it is that way, but we're looking to consider whether we want to standardize it or not.
Yes, and I think another benefit of having sort of a baseline that everyone's operating from is that many BCCs have not drafted their own set of rules, and so they're kind of operating in a rules vacuum right now, and so this would address that problem.
So we could say we have a standard rules that apply, however, any BCC has the option to write their own should they choose, but otherwise these standards would apply.
And that currently exists.
Our current city council rules do not apply to BCCs. And so this would be a change in that approach. It would be setting forward some basic principles for all BCCs that if BCCs chose, they could supplement with additional rules.
And that's what's written into the current draft in front of us.
That is the goal of the current draft. I think it could benefit from some clarification on that point.
Okay, so does anybody wish to make a motion to accomplish that clarification?
Sure. I mean, I like that. I think that's good, only I would say not just supplement, but, the standard rules would apply to all BCCs. However, any BCC may opt to craft their own rules. But if they don't, these apply. That's a motion.
Then I will second said motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to allow BCCs the option of adopting their own rules, which could come in the form of modification of the template. Is there any additional information staff would need to write this one up? Does that make enough sense to you?
So is it that the council rules apply to BCCs and the BCCs can supplement on top of it? Or is it that BCCs can use council rules as a template but change them as they see fit?
Either one, or override them altogether.
Okay.
But void of that, they would go by the rules established. So they're not ever without rules, so
Can
to
I,
speak.
as chair, question the premise of this discussion? If we are discussing city council rules, within the rules themselves, is it appropriate to compel BCCs to follow these rules? Or is that something which would have to be accomplished by an ordinance amending the city code?
I think it would be appropriate, and to the extent or an ordinance change would be required, we could do that in the implementing ordinance that will accompany the new draft rules when it returns to this body. And then I guess I also want to ask one other further point of clarification. I think it would make sense for the city council rules to apply to standing committees. And so the distinction between standing committees and other BCCs, it would be helpful to have some guidance on that as well.
Yeah, so let's kind of split this question. The first question, or one question, is do the council rules apply to standing committees of the city council? And then the next question is, do council rules apply to BCCs? I'm going to suggest that council rules reflect the unique needs and concerns of this legislative body, but not necessarily the concerns of BCCs. I think it might make sense if separately we drafted, rules templates for BCCs that they can choose to amend if they would like to do so. But that's something that would kind of happen outside of this rule-making process. So I'm not sure if that helps our discussion tonight. I'm going to go to Councilmember Rogers.
I would just say that I believe I stated earlier that all BCCs should be allowed to create their own rules and should not be held to council rules. They all behave differently and are totally different bodies looking at different matters, even amongst themselves. So the only thing that I see, and it's a question that really didn't come up in this, that was removed from the last rules, was if there are council rules and council members are appearing before BCCs and there are council rules that guide behavior before BCCs, those do apply, because those are the rules that council has placed upon itself in its interactions with those boards. But I don't believe we should direct boards to follow our rules.
Councilmember Rogers.
That was me
That
flipping
was
my
you.
light off that I thought was on.
You
Sorry,
just-
once
okay,
again.
Got it. Sorry, getting late. There are no motions on the table. I'm going to make a motion. Councilmember Kelly did?
But I'm happy to amend it.
Okay, can you
to
restate the
as-
motion? I'm sorry.
Well, the motion was just that we would provide a template that boards, committees, and commissions may use, but all boards, committees, and commissions, with the exception of excluding standing committees of council, if that's the sentiment. Excluding standing committees of council, can create their own.
that strikes me as a good idea, but I'm not sure that the rules of city council is the way to make that happen. I think that might be a separate referral to make that happen. I'll turn to staff and ascertain your preference if you have one.
My opinion doesn't matter, but I would say because our council rules guide quite a few things about standing committees and BCCs, I think it's appropriate to have some baseline. But, whatever you guys want to do.
If it's helpful context, the standing committees at least are creatures of the council rules.
Right.
They are created by the council rules. And so at a minimum, I think it makes a lot of sense to have the council rules govern standing committees. BCC, there's stuff in our current rules on BCCs, on appointments, on other things. So it's not the case that BCCs are totally separate from our current rules regime. They're interwoven in there. And so I think we could have the rules set, as I said, set forth kind of a baseline for BCCs, and then they could go above and beyond that, depending on their specific purview. We could treat that differently, whatever direction this body has.
All right, so let's take it in order, and the chair will entertain a motion, confirming that council rules apply to standing committees. You're seeking that clarification. I'm suggesting we offer that. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'm not going to make the motion, if someone else would like to. I think it gets confusing because our council rules address things like the mayor's role and things like that. So I think we have to say they guide standing committees, but they cannot be the rules of standing committees. Because there isn't somebody there to break a tie, for example, or quorums are different. I mean, there's a bunch of different things there. So I think that we should use them as a guide for standing committees, realizing that there is some difference between them.
You mean for BCCs?
For standing
For
committees.
standing
Oh,
committees.
a guide for standing
A
committees.
guide
So
for
is
standing
that-
committees.
Okay, understood.
Everything Councilmember Rogers is saying strikes me as true. Is that sufficient guidance for staff when it comes to these rules? And as part of that question, is that sufficient guidance for staff and the chair of these committees moving forward? That we are looking at council rules as kind of our guide, but they're not our Bible. Because what Councilmember Rogers has not, I don't think, suggested is that APW should make up its own rules and P&D should make up its own rules and Human Services should make up its own rules. You didn't say that. But I think there should be enough guidance in council rules to govern the conduct of those BCCs, of those standing committees.
So to be clear, the direction is to redraft the rules to say that as they apply to standing committees, they are guidelines, but they are not binding?
There's not a motion on the table to redraft anything. I think we're just kind of debating the idea. I guess the fundamental
Okay,
question is
I
what
guess
rules.
what I'm saying is
Yeah.
I'm not clear on what the direction is.
Nor are we at this point. So the question is, what rules govern standing committees?
Can I make a suggestion here that we
Please.
wait until we have approved council rules so we know what would apply, what wouldn't apply, things like that, and can make that determination at that point rather than having to make that determination at this particular moment?
Well, the way the current draft is written, it applies to both standing committees and BCCs, so that would be a drafting change that I would need direction to make.
So for the moment, I did have a motion that was seconded.
Right.
Let's go back to the motion on the table. Can you restate that, please?
Sure. The motion on the table is that BCCs have the option to follow a template, a recommended guided template on rules, or they can craft their own rules. They're exempt from, they're not obligated to follow it. But that excludes standing committees for the moment. We can discuss that at our next time. But for now, all BCs minus standing committees will be provided with a template of rules that we would recommend, but they're not obligated to follow them and can craft their own.
I understand what you're saying. Is that written anywhere in our rules? Are you suggesting an amendment to these rules? Or is this, you're making a motion to amend our rules to say
Correct.
what you said? Now, is it clear to staff on what
I'm
you would do
looking at the
with
bullet
this?
point here and responding to it.
I think my understanding is that the current draft would be redrafted so that it does not apply to BCCs. We would then generate a separate BCC rules template that each BCC could adopt at its discretion.
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
So that's the motion. Staff understands what the motion means. Council members understand what the motion means. Is there any discussion on this motion? And let me just restate it. To amend the draft rules such that they will not apply to BCCs. Then separately, staff will draft some template rules which BCCs may choose to adopt by their own vote.
Minus standing.
Is that correct?
Yes, but with excluding standing committees.
Correct. Yeah, BCCs, which by definition does not include standing committees. Okay, I think we're all clear. Is anybody not clear? Let me call the roll on that one.
I have a second.
We don't have a second.
I thought I seconded.
Councilmember Rogers has, Councilmember Kelly has moved, Councilmember Rogers has seconded. We are getting, it's getting late, we can tell. It's been moved and seconded. Let's call the roll.
Councilmember Isles.
Yes.
Mayor Biss.
No.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
No.
By a vote of 7-2, that motion passes. There is one last item on our consolidated feedback regarding public comment. Does anybody wish to make a motion regarding item E5, public comment?
Haven't we kind of already addressed this?
Did we?
Yeah, if we're excising all the BCC material from the rules, then
Okay, sorry. We did that already, and now that I am reading it, that was for BCCs. Okay. Got it. All right, so that one is moot, which brings us to the end of this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your diligent participation in this discussion. Staff, good luck to you in interpreting our feedback from this meeting and our previous meeting. This is going to come back to us with hopefully a final or close to a draft at a future meeting of this committee. Do we want to contemplate scheduling that meeting right now, or is this something we want to deal with offline later? The consensus of the committee is to not do it right now. So there being no further business to come before this committee, I would declare the meeting adjourned at 8:50 p.m. Thank you, everybody.